Whereabouts are you now? Like
at home.
Oh,
It's my
you
own
went back
place.
to Belgium?
Oh no! I'm
you're still in
home in Berlin.
Berlin, right? Okay.
I just got off a day of practice, right? So
does everyone in Fnatic have their own apartment?
not everybody, but you have the option to if you want to.
Okay.
So I feel a bit more comfortable in my own place. Obviously, I have my girlfriend here as well, so it's not very reasonable. I mean, it works, but I'd rather have my own place. I feel like it's pretty good, just mentally. Just when I leave the office, I know I'm done with my day of work. If that makes sense.
No, I think it's a good. That's one reason it's a very good approach, actually, mate. It's one thing people never thought about with team houses is it's a famous thing. Like I work from home, but I'm luckily someone who has my house set up in a way where, like, I mean, I work all the time anyway, so because I don't really do very good life management. But most people have the opposite problem if they work from home, which is like it just distracts them all the time, and they have a hard time like getting into doing their work. Because they think I'm at home, and you can just go into the other room. So I think just for that reason alone, it's a good approach. Like I know some people, for example, who are like professional authors, and they purposely did that. They like hired an office space to do their writing in. They go there in the morning. That way in your brain, it's like, right, I'm doing work now, doing this. And then when you leave as well, same thing. You think, right, leave that at the office, go home.
Right, absolutely. Like it just separates the solo queue I play in the office from the solo queue I play at home, because it's just...
Right, I see. It was actually even more next level, Loco. What he needs to do is, right, when he's doing all that like mad over-greeding in top lane and then potentially inting if he doesn't carry the whole game, he leaves that in solo queue at home. And then when he comes to Fnatic, when he walks in, he's like, right, my job is to sack the lane, reckless carries. Sack the lane, right? Yeah. So he got the mantra when he walks in the room. You know, like at Manchester United or whatever. When you walk down the tunnel, they'll have like a thing over the top that'll say something like, I don't know, greatness is held in the echoes of eternity. You know, something that the players seen it reminds them. Over the Fnatic thing, it just says, remember, it's all about reckless. Right? So just so when you walk in, you know exactly that's the world you're living in right now. So. Right, this is going to be episode 83 of Listen Loco. 83, the year I was born. Now, what's interesting is that's not relevant to anyone else because everyone else in other countries just says the year that they were born. But for some reason, in Korea, they actually say, like, the year that you were born is, like, that's like the year that's what they do before they say the age. Because obviously, to be fair, they have the lunar year part that does fuck it up. But also because that's how utterly fucked their culture is for thinking of, like, everyone in society as even later in life being in, like, a class in school where you're comparing yourself to your peers at all points in time. Like, am I succeeding? Was my mother right? Should I become a doctor? Fuck, what am I doing? I'm becoming neurotic. Oh my god, I'm playing games. Am I a world champion yet? I failed. Oh, what have I done? Oh, I only came second. Sorry, I apologize to the great nation of Korea for letting you down with a runners-up finish at Worlds this year. I will never again. And then you commit seppuku, I believe it's called.
Sudoku.
No, obviously, yeah, Sudoku. Yeah, my apologies. I don't want to ever get any of the cultural aspects wrong. Right, no. So anyway, speaking of people who in games metaphorically commit seppuku, we've got one of the all-time greatest top lane inters to ever play League. No, it's the guest for this episode is Bwipo from Fnatic, who obviously was in the finals of Worlds. If I were you guys, what I'd do is I'd say it like this. What you do is normally the term is I was a Worlds finalist, right? What you should say is just like we had a really great run and got to the finals. Because if you say it like that, right, this is clever marketing, Bwipo. People think then of the great run you had, the fact that you got to finals, you've emphasized all the best parts. Problem is, if you say Worlds finalist, I start remembering the final, mate. And I know you don't want to remember that. So no one wants to remember that final. We all want to delete it. It never happened. Yeah. Listen, there was no final as far as I can tell. For some reason, it was just a forfeit. You guys gave Rookie and Shy the championship. At the end of the second game, I believe the Shy did actually type, like, when does the final start? This practice is boring. Is it true? I don't know. Maybe
I didn't see that happening. But
right, okay. It was in Korea.
I wasn't there in game 3, so I couldn't even see the lobby in game 3, right?
Yeah. No, game 3 was where it was just like, right. Problem is, we're kind of worried that everyone's going to think if we'd have played Soaz, will have won. So let's play Soaz, but absolutely fuck him into the ground just to make sure that can never be a narrative. And then you were like, mission accomplished. Right, we can now honorably lose the tournament. Plus, to be fair, I'm okay with losing the finals because, first of all, it's the best placing any team's ever had from Europe. Like, obviously, season 1's irrelevant when there's no Koreans in that context. Right. And also, to be fair, just was absolute banter the way you guys crushed Cloud9 in the semi-finals. That was funny as fuck, I can't lie.
Yeah. Good, I think honestly, like, Koreans weren't relevant in season 1, but they weren't relevant in season 8 either. So by that logic, you could kind of
except the Koreans on IG. Those guys were hella relevant. I agree. Korean teams. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
I mean, just banter, right?
Yeah.
I think honestly, like main thing about Worlds 2018 is I feel like, yeah, I played most of the games. I think that's. I guess people just want to hear why I played most of the games, or like that's the only interesting part, or like.
Was it ever actually up for debate when you went to the tournament? Like maybe this will be a true rotation, maybe it'll be you one game,
yes,
was the other? Because obviously in the end, you're right. I think Soaz by the end only played something like 5 games or something ridiculous.
Yes. I mean, ultimately the whole tournament was like even during the tournament it was always discussed on what player we wanted to play, right? But so group stage we shared the games. I got the pity games against G-Rex, right? That's why I had 2 games, right? It's just to test me, right? Again, we call them the pity games because well, you're playing against the wildcard team, right?
You're expected to lose, yeah.
Right, exactly. So you get the pity games, and then 100 Thieves, honestly, not spectacular by any means. So, we knew we could go 4-0, right? We're top 2 no matter what. It's just against IG, we want to just see what we can do. So the first game we played Soaz, and he played a really good game, right? That sound game was set the tone for his performance at Worlds, which was a really good game in my opinion. He was the guy that kept us in the IG game. The problem here was, do you play Soaz again and see what happens? Or do you just bet on your rookie and just try and see what he can pull off? Because, again, worst case, you lose and you go out of groups anyway. Best case, something happens, right? What exactly, you don't know, because that's the whole thing about putting a rookie on the world stage, right? You can't bank on a good performance. But coaching staff decided it was worth the chance. We tied them 1-1, played them again straight after and managed to beat them, right? So I think that is what set the tone for the tournament, in the sense that because we beat them right there, there was obviously a lot of emotion involved from the team towards playing with me because we won those games. I don't think, honestly, at any point of the tournament in group stage, it mattered whether me or Soaz played. However, when quarterfinals came around, it did matter.
You think if you lose the tiebreaker to IG, then maybe it's more of an even rotation again in the playoffs?
Well, I think it was more Victor. I'll be honest with you.
That was something I wanted to ask.
Beyond broken.
If you're a rookie going to Worlds, top laner, and then in the meta you hear like, "Oh, Victor's viable," and you have literally played 1 billion games anyway, even when it wasn't.
This was one of my most champions. Right? Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying, right? So all of a sudden, Victor becomes a huge priority, right? And obviously with the narrative that may just have been my thing because I played bot lane, and then even in top lane I was pulling out Swain. Even in group stage, right, I played Swain and whatnot. So this type of mage is right up my alley, and my coaching staff thinks the same. And then scrim performance proves that I'm still capable on playing champions like Victor. So Victor suddenly comes into the meta, and you're asking yourself, all right, do you want to have this pick or ban champion? Do you want to have the player that can basically force a Victor ban, or you first pick it and this champion is not balanced? Do you want to have the better Victor player or the better Sion player, the better, more stable player, you could say, right? And I feel like at that Worlds, in general, what people can take away from it is that solo laners popping off was a really big deal. Like you wanted people that would just step the fuck up and go kill people. Just, well, to a degree of inting almost, right? Like there was some int at Worlds, I'll be honest. I was part of it, especially at the finals.
If you play that style of solo lane, though, the difference between inting and carrying the whole game can be a small margin. In fact, sometimes just a 1 kill that goes wrong in the game.
Right, absolutely. But ultimately, I think that was what made the decision, right? We felt like my Victor was up there. And again, in terms of the meta, back then, it was Aatrox, Urgot. These were the 2 top laners that everybody contested. There was Irelia Akali, which we didn't play top lane because we just felt like when the champions were locked in, Caps felt like he should have them because they were the most broken, right? And we all agreed as a team, you know what? We can't really argue with that. Let's just blind pick them mid. They're really, really strong. Let's just have Caps, our strongest player, play them. So the question was, it's Aatrox, Urgot, and Victor. And coaching staff agreed I was the better Aatrox player, but they also agreed that Soaz was the better Urgot player. So we were kind of 50-50 there. So the question just was, okay, what merits do I bring? What merits does Soaz bring? And I brought Victor to the table, which ultimately is what tipped the scales, because Victor was kind of what broke the playoffs.
Pretty pivotal.
He broke playoffs in the sense that whoever could play Victor had a huge advantage all of a sudden. So
what's funny is, earlier I referenced the fact that, like, obviously you guys beating Cloud9. If you're an EU fan, that was hilarious, obviously, because that was like NA's moment. They thought they could do it, and then they had no chance whatsoever. But the sad thing about that matchup actually is, so for Westerners, it's interesting because you got to see you versus Licorice. But actually, what people forget is since Afrika, people thought they were going to beat Cloud9 and make it to the semis.
Right.
A lot of people didn't know it at the time. And sadly, because of that Worlds performance, people who've only watched Worlds will think that the Afrika top laner, Keen, is shit. But he's actually the best top laner in Korea now. He's really good. So you never got to play him, sadly, in that match. Is he someone who played in scrims or anything? Were you looking for that match when the bracket came up?
Yeah, I mean, we scrimmed him at the boom camp, and like he's a really good player. He's a really smart player. He was always like, I don't know how to say it. He was just hard to play against. Like he's a very smart player. Every decision he makes sense, and the trades he does are creative. Like he was one of the first people that I've ever seen eating backwards into a shroud as a Kali, which is a staple trade right now, right? But back then it was like, whoa, okay, like this champion can do that. So I feel like he knows how to push his limits, and it's a damn shame I didn't get to play against him because honestly, obviously we had the licorice me thing. You had the video where I said he was less than acceptable. Yeah. I mean, again, like, I should have known. I think Keen solo killed him 5 times in a 0-3 game. Like a 0-3 series, he solo killed Licorice 5 times, right? And at that time, I could somewhat lane against, if not match Keen in lane, which meant that for me, I should have had an alarm bell ringing, right? Add on to the fact that he had to lane against Victor, I think 4 out of 6 games, which, poor guy.
He was playing stuff like Gangplank, when he was one of the only players that could win lane for his team. So he's on like a scaling champion that's getting shoved in early and then getting dope, and he really doesn't get to show his shit. And I remember getting shit on, but
good coach, right? Good coach. Your favorite coach, right?
What? Who, me?
Keep going. Yeah, keep going. You always big up Reaper the whole time, man. I always tell you, listen, there's Reaper in the regular season, and there's Reaper in playoffs. You know, keep going.
It's not. Okay, anyway.
So he leans forward, takes a sip out of a little fucking child's juice box, and then thinks he can be taken seriously in the next comment. Yeah, go on, Loco. Do you want a little bite of Lunchables? Or do you want to keep going with your point? Fuck.
I'm going to have my mom talk to your mom after this, Duncan.
Listen, how do you know I don't already talk to your mom?
I said my mom will talk to your mom.
Anyway. You already know that they're not talking, right? Anyway, why do you think I'm here? What happened was my mom said, listen, your son's getting all the fucking clout and hits on the internet. And, you know, my young boy, Yunsop, he's Yunsop. Problem is, you know, he struggles a little bit, you know.
Yunsop is for friends. Call me Loco, please. Anyways,
keep going.
Anyways, going back to Keen, I remember like a lot of people didn't give Keen credit, especially the Western fans, for the ones that didn't watch Korea. Keen was fucking insane that season. He was a really weird mixture of being able to be aggressive and being able to push his lead without not getting jungle ganked. There are aggressive players. There's players like Mario.
Probably the best all-around top, I would say.
And there's a players like Bwipo who are heavy pressure, and you always have to account for them. And you can never have a game plan when you play versus Bwipo or Marn without what are we going to do about top lane. But it is a double-edged sword for them where they can be a boon or they can also be a huge negative for your team. Where Keen is just like, give him resource, he'll carry. Don't give him resource, he'll independently build his small leaves and snowball too. He was just so well-rounded as a player, and he got no credit, and he wasn't able to show that on a world stage. I think that's one of the biggest, like, kind of disappointment about last Worlds, where Korea, the good players in Korea actually didn't get to show their shit, like KT going out in quarters, and then Afrika just being a mess and then losing to C9. Like, Korea as a region was underwhelming compared to China and Europe, but they were better than what they shown, and that's never ever going to get talked about. If you talk about Korea in 2018, it's like it's a year they got shit on. They were individually good players, and there were good teams. KT played fucking IG and went to game 5.
Put it this way, in the same way as I always tell people who didn't watch the LPL, I don't blame them for not watching the LPL. It's a very weird region. It's on weird times, and there's a billion games. But if you didn't watch the LPL for the last 6 or 7 years, like, your idea of who Uzi is completely busted. Like, you would already think that he was the player he is now, basically, in like season 3, whereas he wasn't. He had a lot of development. He himself had a very extreme playing style. But in the same way as if you only watched Worlds and MSI, you'd have a really skewed version. Too good. You'd think he was too good as an ADC. It's the other way with Kane, actually. Like, over the last 2 years in Korea, he has been the best Korean top laner, but because the only tournament he went to, unfortunately, was that Worlds, and then it didn't go well, people think he's shit. So what about the other way around then? So a player that actually has the opposite of that, Bwipo, who, because at the international tournaments, obviously Worlds, he looked amazing, was the Shy from the final. So what was it like to play against the Shy?
Actually, before I talk about the Shy, the thing about Keen that really impressed me, to finish off that point, was I feel like to be a good top laner, a good laner in general, you need to have a good balance of aggressive play. I don't think you can be considered good as a laner or as a player even if you're not able to go aggressive, right? I think this is one of the biggest criticisms people have on laners that are stable is that they don't trade enough. Sneaky is a perfect example, right? The guy doesn't do anything. That's why he's not considered to be the best, right? He's super stable. He will carry the game if the game gets to that point, but he's never going to be the reason that the game gets into a good state. Keen was able to do this without ever getting punished. And that's like the ultimate that a player like me wants to get to, right? I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that doesn't get punished but still gets away with the cheeky trade here and there. In comes the Shy. He was laying against him, you could feel it, right? He was always looking for an opportunity. I'll never forget one moment in a game. It was tiebreaker game. It was the first game I think I played against him, and I was playing Urgot into Fiora. I was just laning, and I was like max ranging him, right? I was basically playing outside of his range for him to trade me. And I was just waiting for the wave to bounce back to me, and I was looking at bot lane, and I kept tapping my camera back and forth. If you had pro view, I would be able to share this, right? But I remember exactly the moment. And at one point, even if I go back into the VOD, you'll see it. He all-ins me, right? And I didn't even like, what? He was actually able to all-in me when I was convinced he would never be able to touch me. And if you go back into the VOD, you'll see an all-in trade where I get really low under my turret. I think it was the first game I played against him. And it was just, that is what set the tone for me, right? It was like, like this guy, I can't fuck with this guy. Like, if I'm going to step up to this guy, I need to know exactly what I'm doing, because if I'm trading with him, like he's clearly got an advantage, is how it felt, at least compared to other top laners. It's not that I was scared of trading against him.
Sure.
It was just he knew what he was doing. If he was taking a trade, it felt like you had to forcibly take control back from him. And that was the hardest part about playing against the Shy for sure. Like, his way of playing the game was it was very controlled as well. I don't think he was nearly as aggressive as people made him sound to be, in the sense that he would go in bad moments. It just felt like every opportunity you could give him, he would take, right? So whenever there was an opportunity, he was taking it, right? And that's why it felt like he was very oppressive, because sometimes you would just slip up slightly and he would be there. That's how
I would contrast it. I kind of agree with the way you characterized it. I would contrast it as the difference between prime Faker and prime Caps, right? Caps himself will admit sometimes he goes in on shit that's like, I sort of knew even when I went in on that probably shouldn't have. The difference was prime Faker would go in on that shit. And listen, like, but him and the Shy have a similar concept, like you're explaining there, where they have so many times they get like a ridiculous kill under the tower, get out with like the 2 health or something. And then obviously the joke would be anyone in solo queue as a joke would go calculated, but it's like they almost did calculate that. Like they somehow do know that they can get away with that. Whereas the point is, normally why you think you're safe is like no one would do that. Like if you die there, it's such a bad scenario that normally no person is going to attempt the play. Never mind pull it off as well. So I agree. Like it's somehow knowing when. It's like they know there's an opportunity and then they'll go to the absolute limit of what the champion can do. But they're not just doing it blindly. Obviously, they'd look a lot worse, I think, if they did.
What you said, Duncan, is actually a thing in Korea. So there's a meme about Faker called I Got Him. Faker, like, randomly while he's laning, will say, I got him. And then 2 seconds later, he'll get the kill. And viewers will be like, wait, what the fuck? And he calls the kill out and he's like, oh, in this situation, when he uses skill like this, or he steps forward like this, even at full HP, he knows he can kill him in that situation and he'll call it. So it's not even like a random thing. It is an actual thing that Faker does on stream.
One thing about Worlds 2018 and me laning against the Shy is that I played Urgot every single time I laning against him. So take my experience with a grain of salt. The champion was beyond unbalanced. You could not break this champion in lane, even if you tried. Like, honestly, like the only thing you could do is spam gank him, which ultimately did happen. I actually have a funny story about the Gragas thing. In group stage, they did the same thing, right? They played Irelia Gragas. I was playing Ornn, and I sidestepped his ultimate when he Predator ganked me, right? I'm sure people will, like, if you go back, some people will remember it. I kill him 2v1, I trade 1-for-1, right? And I realized after the finals, I was like, wait, if this gank was successful, I would have chain died the same way that I did in the finals, because that's when I realized that Predator Gragas is not balanced. There is very little counterplay with the skill set Gragas has with that amount of movement speed, right? And just as a top laner and the way the lane is played, most champions don't have counterplay to this. It's very, very hard, if not impossible. And it's just something I realized is, wait, if this guy actually didn't run it down on all the ganks he did in group stage, I would have realized that Gragas plus Irelia was the most disgusting 2v2 in the game at that time that was viable.
Right, let's go. Let's actually talk a bit about season 9 then. So first place we have to go, I want to get your take on, is one of the interesting ways I've noticed people have looked at your play this year in the context of Fnatic is they nearly always draw it at some point to like Bwipo with caps, Bwipo without caps. And I've heard lots of interesting things from like Youngbuck, a whole bunch of players where like part of the, basically the gist of it sort of goes that your style of play, if you have a player who already is putting up a lot of pressure on the map and is drawing a lot of attention like caps, it allows you to play a lot more freer in terms of your role in the top lane, right? I mean, obviously, there isn't going to be as much jungle attention, or if there is, that gives caps free lack of jungle. So there's times you can't really lose in that scenario. You know, it's like the saying in English is pick your poison. You have to pick which person you want to try and put down, but in doing so, you enable the other. So how was it different to come into Fnatic with Nemesis instead playing? What was the dynamic like for you?
For me, like ultimately, 2018 Fnatic, my job was to draw as much pressure as possible, right? We had Reckless that was scaling, and every time they went top, and the gank wasn't detrimental to my laning phase in the sense that I could still be relevant in the game, it was buying time, right? I was buying time for Reckless, I was buying time, I was tanking ganks in a way for Caps to go do his thing, right? But ultimately, I think the difference between playing with Nemesis and playing with Caps is that Caps was much more aggressive in communicating what he wanted and what he needed. So naturally, it looked a lot better because he was putting a lot more pressure, but he's also hogging more resources. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that 2019 Fnatic has, is that nobody is a resource hog. Reckless is not a resource hog. Nemesis is not a resource hog. Well, I am kind of. So naturally, because the other
ideally you would be, yeah.
Exactly. So because the other two lanes aren't demanding resources, they're not going there. Now the thing is I don't want to demand resources because quite honestly, playing through top lane, it's been 9 seasons. It still is not the optimal way of playing. But because nobody else demands the resources, they usually just end up going to me eventually. You can see this in our games, right? There's nothing happening for like 10 minutes. And if there's nothing happening, at some point, a player like Hylissang wants to make something happen, right? And then the question is, where can I go? Usually it's my lane because of how I play, right? I play aggressively, I step forward, I'm going to trade. There's going to be a flash down, whether I'm 0-1 or 0-2 or 1-0 or 2-0. It depends on the game. But ultimately, there will be cooldowns down or things will happen, right? And I feel like that's something we somewhat struggle with, is making those things happen in other lanes out of situations where everybody has all their summoners and whatnot, all their cooldowns. And because it's just way easier to gank a lane that has no flash. Our Splice claim last weekend, I think it was last weekend, Gangplank has no flash, right? So even though our Kai'Sa has a 30 CS lead, my Rakan and Gragas just go to the lane where the play is free, right? It's free. But the opportunity cost is way greater, and it's not something we calculate when we're playing because we tend to get emotional.
In the spring split, I sadly, you experienced the downside of being on a huge team like Fnatic or TSM, which is when the results aren't what the fans want, especially if you're the newest player, you will be the lightning rod for all the criticism. And a lot of fans who were loving you in season 8 were fucking going in on you in season 9 spring. Yeah. And I have to say, it's funny because I've been someone who's been critical of some elements of your play myself, but I had to defend you basically because one area I feel like was very misunderstood was, bearing in mind one of the band-aids, Youngbuck himself will even admit this, was the way that you figured out how to win in spring was you play heavily through Reckless and you allow him to carry the games, and he was doing an amazing job. And that was the best lane in the game. But what people missed was, yes, there was certainly some games where Bwipo winted some of the kills or overextended. But what people never acknowledged already, I almost never saw this written, was when the game was focused around the bot lane, you sometimes literally sacked entire waves and just had to leave lane to go and help elsewhere, right?
Well, the thing is that was a conscious decision. And honestly, when I did that, it was good for the game, right? Like, don't get me wrong. You make it sound like I was ready to lay down my life, right?
Sure.
Not quite. I would never lay down that's the thing. Like, as a player, I would never completely lay down my life as a player unless I felt like I would have no influence on the game if I didn't, right? Like, if I just laned and I waited 25 minutes, nothing would happen, or I wouldn't be able to do anything, I would never just completely concede my lane. But yes, there was points of spring where I would just decide, you know what? The time has come. I'll go bot lane, right? Like, this is a good moment for me. I'll drop 1 or 2 waves, but in return, I'll take a turret, a dragon, whatnot, right? Like, I'll take something off the map in return that is more valuable than the waves. So yes, I did at some point TP bot and show up a lot in the bottom side of the map, but that was all calculated in the sense that it was still fine for me. I didn't.
No, I mean it as a
sacrifice-
compliment, by the way, mate.
Right,
My point-
absolutely,
My
absolutely.
point
It's
basically is that to a lot of fans, this would
Right.
go counter to the narrative, because the narrative in their
Yeah, yeah.
brain would be you're just trying to get the most CS and win lane, right?
No,
Whereas
no.
what you're doing there explicitly gives up the
Yeah.
lane at times.
Right, absolutely. I think it's a very it's a very unique way of playing, and honestly, I'm having a hard time recreating it sometimes because in spring it worked somehow. Like sometimes I notice myself like, wait, if I go bot here, it's really good. So I guess I'll just show up. But it's something that's very game specific, but it's definitely a good line of play that I'd like to see other teams doing sometimes, right? Because I do think it's just like something that in general top laners don't have. I feel in the LEC is that they're not creative in the sense that they're not doing things with waves. They're not being in places that I'd like to see them be, right? They're not playing the map as much as their lane.
Fair enough.
That's how I feel, at least when I look at a lot of LEC top. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good ones, right? There's a lot. Like, LEC is stacked with good top laners, but I just
Who
don't
do you
feel
think's
like
the best?
it's hard to say, honestly. I think Wunder is obviously the guy you have to say, right? It's the name I have to name because of the performance from spring. But I feel like in summer I haven't seen him play a single game where I was like, Jesus, you know. That was a really solid, like, don't get me wrong, really solid game. Sure, he's had a few, but like a game where I was like, that was top line difference, or he really performed that game. I don't remember one from summer.
Isn't that
Maybe
kind
someone
of
else
summer
does.
meta not revolving around top lane and it being
I disagree
more mid
because
and
I
bot
feel like
focused?
I've had some games where it was like, all right, this was top lane difference. I mean, I could be too cocky in saying this, but I feel like top lane, the meta has basically been Aatrox, right? He's been there the whole split. The champion was beyond busted. He's been nerfed, and there's answers that people have found, but
Still pretty good.
he's still considered the best top laner in Korea, for example. He gets picked every single game. So I don't feel like it's a meta thing, no.
I mean, it's no longer stuff like Ryze, Irelia, Akali. I mean, there is some Akali, like no longer stuff like
Right.
Sylas, like these
Yeah.
like insane top lane carries. Like that's where I felt like, oh, Wonder and Caps. Like that's where the following
right.
shined.
Yeah, even though I know what you mean, Loco, to be fair, you are talking to someone who plays like fucking Rengar and Hector. Like, he doesn't give a fuck, mate. He is playing shit that could carry in theory.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm more of a bruiser player. I feel like my team also functions better when I have a bit of beef going behind, going with me, basically. I think that we have our best games when I'm playing a champion like Aatrox. There's a good reason why I've picked this champion over the past two splits almost. Well, I'm not going to say exclusively, but I have had a very high priority on Aatrox for this reason. Beefy champion, can engage, solid laning phase, brings a lot of damage to the table. You have to respect him, right? The whole idea of Aatrox, just it matches me, doesn't it? It's just
lot
a
of
champion you
pressure.
have to respect. You
Yeah,
have to
hard to
respect
kill.
his laning phase. You have to respect everything about Aatrox, because if you don't, he'll be there and he'll kill 5 people.
And you got to keep it down as well. You can't just fucking chill and just let it farm up and just do whatever he wants,
Yeah.
can you?
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much fits you, yeah.
Do
Pretty
you
good
think the
one.
champion's well designed?
I mean, in terms of feeling and how I feel like playing him, absolutely. It's just, there's some things that are a little bit unbalanced about him. Obviously, I think, for example, the thing where his Q reset cooldown, I don't know why they implemented this. This was never a thing. All of a sudden, I have 2 CDR items. I have 20% CDR. I'm level 9. I decide not to use my third Q, and my first Q is back up. By the time my Q expires, like it has a literal 0.5 second cooldown, by the way. If you let your third Q expire completely, it is up immediately, which means I can endlessly chase you, which makes no sense.
Yeah.
Right? But I do think the steps they took in hitting his sustain on creeps, hitting his stacks on E, they have made him into a champion that requires a little bit of finesse, right? Because in the past it was like, oh, I missed my first Q, it doesn't matter, dash, right? But I feel like at this point he has reached a point where maybe some balance changes, maybe some scaling, like level scaling on his Q, because I feel like his base Q damage is still far too high. Because I feel like right now the optimal way of laning him top lane is you get your Mercury Treads or Ninja Tabai, whichever resistance you need, and a Kindle Gem, and by level 9 the guy can't lane anymore. So yeah, I don't think that is good design, but I do feel like they've put him in a point where if they hit the numbers, he will be a balanced champion.
The thing you said about cooldown
go
and
on.
the thing you said about like Aatrox having like very small openings, I think that's where like the champion design really failed, because Riot talks about like bruisers, like for them to be fun, there has to be strong points and weak points, and the opening to go on Aatrox is just so little, and if you don't get him in that opening, he heals back so much. So the only real good counterplay versus Aatrox is CC him and kill him to make sure he can't lifesteal. He has mobility, he has damage, he has somewhat of a CC too, so it's just the champion leaves so little counterplay in the space that just CC and then kill him, and that's not actual counterplay.
It's the mistake. Like Aatrox has to make the mistake, right? If he wastes his Q and throws his third Q out and it doesn't do anything, it gets dodged or flashed or whatnot, then he's just sitting duck for 4 seconds, right? But how much is 4 seconds when this guy's got a health pool worth of 3 champions and then will heal back 5 champions health pool? Like that's kind of the problem, right? Items such as GA, which again, like they had to remove the revive because it was too oppressive, right? Well, I guess I'll just buy one. And Starax, which is just, it gives you tenacity and a burst shield, which is exactly what he needs. Make him over the top.
Yeah. I'm more power to you, like you're abusing a champion that's good in the meta, but genuinely, I think Riot fucks up some of the design, and Aatrox is one that like stands out to me.
Absolutely.
Another thing as well, I think that makes it very, very tough to balance. It's the same when I'm in CS:GO and I ever talk about the concept of balance. One of the things I always have to bring up that people never think about is the problem is you have to think of how whatever you're designing will work in many different instances. So, for example, in CS:GO, if you balance a gun, the damage of the gun, how fast it fires, right? You might be trying to balance it, thinking about a 1 versus 1 battle. But the question is, what happens when 3 people buy that gun and sit around a corner? Does that then become OP when the gun itself looked like it wasn't powerful? Like, in the same sense, one of the flaws, I think, in League of Legends, I don't know how you can balance this, but I don't think it's possible, is it's not just what the champion does in lane, obviously, it's how it interacts with the other champions. So one of the big problems I see in the game, like, I'll give you a great example. My favorite champion to play in League of Legends is Pyke. I just spam that in support all day long.
Right.
And here's the thing, though, it's funny, right, is when I play it, because I'm loving it, it seems OP as fuck when I play it. But I have to say, whenever I play against it, because I play it all the time, I never find it hard to play against it at all, actually. I never ever get hit by the Q. I know exactly I know what the cooldowns are. But here's the problem. The reason why it's a nightmare to play against the Pyke is because none of the people who are, I'm not obviously high elo, none of the people who are in my game, even if I give up 0 kills in lane, none of them understand. Like, you wouldn't believe how many low elo players don't even fully understand the ult, which is like, mate, if your health bar goes that, he's going to kill you. Like, it's 100% going to happen. You can't dodge it unless you've got a flash or an ult or something, so it's going to happen. So the sad thing is, all you do is sometimes you do fine in lane and you think, why does everyone complain about it? And then your teammates just chain feed kills in team fights. And every time they get low, it's just inevitable, right? I feel like it's similar with Aatrox. People have figured out the laning pattern, but then the amount of players, even at pro games, you see in fights where it's like, why are they going in range in the fight? Like, he's going to fucking chase you all down and kill you if you go there. Like, that's a tough thing to communicate, because why should a support know how the top lane matchup goes? Why should a mid lane necessarily know? I mean, mid lane's a bit worse because obviously in theory you might play Aatrox, but you know what I mean? Like, that's tough to balance if you're making the game in an abstract sense, not even knowing how pros will use it.
I mean, I think that's highly dependent on the counterplay of the champion, right? Like, for example, Pyke has limited counterplay, but it's very, like, it's clear, you dodge his ult, whether you hourglass it, you flash it, you have to dodge it in a way, and I feel like his counterplay is reaction time, right? You see the ult coming, you have to react to it. So, of course, low elo players will hate playing against Pyke, or this will happen in low elo games, whereas in high elo games, Pyke is broken for different reasons, right? And I think that is the big deal for this game, is that is the hard part. Because again, I understand that, some champions don't have counterplay in certain situations, right? Aatrox does not have counterplay when you're not strong enough to kill him. If you can't CC him and actually deal enough damage to him to kill him, he has no counterplay. But that's kind of his design as well. Whether that's balanced or not, or that should be in the game, different story entirely. We have Mundo, for example. Mundo is the same champion, right? If you don't actually have damage to burst him down, he'll run you down eventually. He'll just kill one by one. Aatrox does several people at the same time. But my point is that this is what makes, for me, balancing the game hard. Because you're talking about Pyke's ult, right? I'm thinking Pyke's passive. Fuck this shit. Like,
of course.
When Pyke top was a thing, it is just so unbalanced. Not to mention the fact that support champions in League of Legends, they're balanced around the fact that they don't get many resources and they have a ridiculous amount of base armor.
Yes.
When I'm a top laner and I see an enemy Pyke walking in with 51 armor because his base armor is 46, I'm thinking, what the fuck, right? This is not balanced. Like, a champion like Pantheon that just got released, a bruiser, right? The most manly champion you can ever imagine at this point, 40 armor. This fucking scrawny-ass pirate's got 46. Jesus Christ. Aatrox is 39, I believe. It's like, why does this support champion have more base armor than me? Of course he's played into Jace. Do you think Jace can do anything against Doran Shield 51 armor? Of course he fucking can. Can't break him for shit. And then because his gold mechanic is completely off the charts, right?
Obviously, yeah.
it was broken as shit before they
Here's
decided to
the
tack
obvious
on
nerf.
300 per kill.
I'll tell you the obvious nerf they should make, right? Because one of the things about nerfing is they always go too far with the nerfs. So in the same way, right, in CSGO, I often tell the people who design the game, you don't actually have to nerf the stats. Sometimes you nerf, for example, in CSGO, if you nerf the price of the weapon, that already changes how much you can buy it, where you buy it, you know. Okay. So similarly, the nerf I would make to Pyke, the most obvious first one is just don't share the gold. He gets all the fucking kills anyway. Why should all his teammates share the kills as well? Like, I'd actually make it where sometimes, like, because at the moment, like, basically there's no point kill stealing. Like, you should let him kill steal because of the way the gold mechanic looks like. But at the moment, like, you just spout, like, obviously everyone knows the G2 games where it's like just the gold they get from that alone is like, that's so unfair to play against. You didn't. I mean,
I've got a Pyke abuser too, right? I've got a Pyke abuser too, right? So
that's true. That's true. Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a champion that requires skill, right? You need to be skilled to make him work. You need to be able to know what you're doing. And the problem ultimately with Pyke is that there's too few champions that can answer his kit. Yes. This is ultimately his problem. There's not enough champions that have enough mobility plus CC at a rate where it's fast enough to actually punish Pyke. That make him unbalanced, right? Because no one likes a support champion that can jump in for a kill, E out, and then stealth, and goodbye. He's also regenerating all his HP back, by the way, just for fun. And that's what I'm saying. And then we can talk about balancing Pyke all we want, but we're not going to get to a solution, right?
To close that up, I'll just give everyone out there who's a shitter in low elo, like all of us, I'll give you all a free little tip that will help you do so much better when you play against teams that have Pyke. This is the tip. So the OP thing about Pyke when you're in any kind of a skirmish or team fight is you just get out, like Bwipo said, with the W or the E, and you start healing up instantly. You get all your health back, right? Understand that window of how long he has to leave the fight for, and you will win so many more fights. Like, there's no in that scenario, he's coming back, but he has to come back in a few seconds. He's probably going to circle around the back. He's going to E over what? Like, you've actually got a few seconds there where there's one less person on the board, as it were. Attack someone else at that point in time. Don't keep trying to chase after that shit, because even if you chase him down, he's going to have all his health and need. Like, think about it logically. Because I'm such a hater, even when it's something that would affect and help me. Yeah. I don't like to win the cheap way, in a way, you know. I like to feel like it actually was skill when you win.
Right, no, I agree. I think to further that point, low elo players don't have the commitment, right? Like, when they don't see when a fight can be good and when a fight is bad. It has to be really obvious. This is why people in low elo complain about playing support in low elo, right? People don't see it, right? You have to make it obvious that the fight is over or won or bad.
Right, I've got a question for you. So I had a very interesting episode recently of the EU show I do where we had Youngbuck and Grabs on, and we were talking and arguing over whether, like, Fnatic has a system or not. And what was bizarre was Youngbuck kept saying that you didn't, and then it was just that, you know, you play certain champions and the way you play those champions within your team and which players play them mean that is logically the way to play it, which, as far as I can tell, is basically saying, yes, there is a system. It's based around these champions. But he just, obviously, the word system is a trigger to this guy. Apparently, you know, he just doesn't want to use that word. Can say anything you want aside from that. So my question is this, right? Within your team, what would you describe as the role of Hylissang in this Fnatic?
That's a very good question. What would I describe Hilly's role as? Enabler, I think. I think he enables the game. Like, he creates situations. I think that is what he does for our team right now. He creates a situation that is good for us.
I know, obviously, this term can be very contentious because maybe there isn't in some teams, but is he the primary shot caller in Fnatic?
Not immediately, but he is one of the people that will continuously ask for what is possible. Like, he will continually ask, okay, can I go mid here? Can I go bot? Can we make a play if I show up here? Can we start the dragon? Can we start the herald? So that's why I say enabler rather than shot caller, because he's enabling us to communicate about what we want to do, where we want to be, how we want to approach the fight. And then he's going to chime in, right? That's when his creativity comes in. Doesn't work all the time, but ultimately it's a big deal of his play pattern, right? Him finding the flanks and whatnot, and this comes because he is the enabler for Fnatic. He will communicate, all right, I think we should go for Herald here. I can move here. Can we gank this lane? Can we gank this guy? He has no flash. He's the guy that keeps reminding us of what is possible in the game and what we can do to forward, like, to progress the game in a positive way.
Between him and Roxa, like, who leads more? Because I see them working together really well, especially when it comes down to river control and especially down to mid. I'm curious which.
I believe Youngbuck said that, like, Brox is mainly doing the shot calling in the later parts of the game or something along those lines.
Like I said, it's like Hilly's asking the questions, right? So usually the laners have to answer, right? Like Broxah's not going to be like, oh, Broxah will obviously have a situation where there's games where he's like, yeah, I can do the dragon here, or we can go invade or whatnot. But usually it's me or Nemesis or Reckless being like, all right, a gank right now would be really good for my lane, or he has a freeze, I need jungle help, or I need, like, if anyone can come, and then everyone chimes in, right? Like that's generally the idea. So early game, I think it's more like Hilly asking questions and then the laners answering. So there's not really like much of a shot calling situation in our team. We're just making sure that all the lanes go well, and then whoever is the strongest coming out of the laning phase will take over shot calling together with Broxah. That's how I feel about our communication system.
Because one of the interesting things is, like, everyone obviously who's a fan just looks and analyzes individually what they think the players are doing in the game. It's the most easy thing to see. You can see if someone's getting a kill, if you're doing the right move. But it sounds as though, like, I actually think people were way too simplistic in making it like minus caps made Fnatic worse, plus caps made them the team they were last year, because it sounds like it's not even necessarily the player caps. You could have a player equally as good as caps, but if he had a different way of communicating, that already sounds like the team would be different. Because, well, a lot of what I'm hearing here is the communication system is what you had to build up this year, because when communication works well, you take it for granted. I often have a saying where I say, in an ideal team, you barely have to communicate, because what you want to do is what they want to do, and it just makes sense. And when you say one thing, they know what you already mean instead of having to say the second part of a sentence. Imagine if every co-host understood that concept. But, you know, it's already understood what you meant by it. So it sounds like in your team, part of it's been figuring out things like, who is going to be the one who initiates a comment, who's the person who's going to determine what you do after that, you know, things like this.
Well, the thing is more than us figuring out. It was just there was a given last year. And the given is that no matter what game you go into, Caps is going to ask for resources. You don't get to work around it. He wants them, right? He's going to ask for ganks. He's going to ask for people to show up. He's going to tell you he's fighting. He's going to tell you he wants to contest the freeze. He wants to roam. He wants to do this. He wants to do that, right? So, and don't get me wrong, right? Like, I don't want to throw Nemesis on the bus here by any means. He's a really good player, and I think he's really smart about the game. But the thing is that's not how he communicates, right? He's not someone that's constantly pressing the need for jungle attention or support.
He seems pretty silent generally as a player, right?
Like, that's what I'm saying, right? It's like he's much more controlled. He will call when he feels like the situation is optimal, right? And I think that's the big difference here. It's like when he feels like this is the optimal moment to come, this is when he should come, right? He's going to ask for jungle attention, because oftentimes there were situations where Broxah shows up mid and then Nemesis is like, I don't think you should be mid at all here. Whereas this would never happen with Caps, right? It was like, oh, you're mid, let's make something happen. Woo, you know, like let's just roll with it, right? Much like how I roll, right? If Brox is near the Krogs, I'm gonna like, you know what? I'm gonna chuck a spell here. If he doesn't react to it, he might die. Wanna come? All right, let's go, right? And that's why you see me and Brox are playing more together, is because that's much more how I communicate, right? I'm gonna see my junglers near me and I'm gonna tell him, you know what? I'm gonna try something here. If you're there, it could be good. Whereas Nemesis is more, the situation is good, I expect you to be here. But if the situation isn't, oftentimes it's you're not 100%, right? Does he want me to be there? Does he not want me to be there? And that's where the communication is hard, right? Because do you really want to have a communication system in a team where you have to tell people what not to do? You want to have a clear plan of what to do.
In spring, I felt like that's when I really realized Nemesis wasn't that vocal. There was a game where he was playing Kassadin. He was level 15, almost about to hit level 16. And I forgot which team it was, but enemy team was setting up around Baron. And then he just needed like 20 more seconds to hit level 16. Level 16 is a really big power spike on Kassadin for people that don't know. It makes your ult like it makes your ult like 3-second cooldown. It's a huge power spike to hit. And you guys weren't buying time, and you guys started a fight, and then he kind of got roped into the fight, and he teleported a little bit later. And that was the game where I knew this guy's not communicating, and this guy is either communicating and the team isn't listening, because from a Kassadin player's perspective, he needed to say, give me 20 more seconds, I'm about to level hit 16, and then we can take the fight. But that call was either made or it just got ignored.
It could also be emotions, right? You can imagine I'm a pretty emotional player. Hylissang is, in my opinion, also an emotional player, in the sense that not in a bad way that we're tilters or whatnot. It's just we're emotional in the sense that if nothing's happening, we're getting anxious, right? Like that's the best way I can describe it. We want to fight. We want to use our cooldowns because we know that if we use them right, we're going to have a good situation going on. So when we don't use them, that might happen, right? And that could have been a game where there was the unfortunate occurrence where both time bombs went off, right? I went off and Healy went off, and we're like, oh, we gotta fight. We haven't been fighting for 25 minutes, guys. Like, we haven't been fighting. Can we start fighting, please? Right? And to give credit to Nemesis, I'm sure he communicated to us that he needed 16, right? Everybody knows this. We know this too. It's just the emotions can take over, right? It's a bad habit, right? You don't want to have that happen. You don't want to go on a game and you want to hit your breaking point where you're supposed to turn the game, and then one of your players is just so anxious about having not done anything that he feels the need to make something happen.
See, there's a Korean top laner actually who plays in the LPL. He plays for Billy Gaming, who obviously has the alias you should have. He's called ADD. There you go. That's his alias. So see if you can do a swap with him. Bwipo's a pretty cool name. Trade it with him. There you go. So no, here's the thing, Loco. I don't know if you've ever seen this meme on the internet, but it reminds me of you, right? Because there's a meme and it goes like this. It's 3 different images, right? It's one of like, I don't know, I'm going to pick, it's like the Buddha or something, you know, and then it's like a quote that's like, you know, we are all one and love each other. And then there's another one where it's like Gandhi and he's like, we are all one. No, and then the response to like the Buddha one is like a hippie going like, ooh, that's deep. Yeah, shit deep. And then there's a guy, it's like Gandhi, and he's like, we're all one, so love each other. And then the person's like, oh, there's a lot of wisdom in that. And then there's one where it's Jesus, and then he goes, we're all one, love each other. And then they go, religion, no thank you. And like the joke there is really just about what your preconceived like biases are, because obviously all 3 of them are saying the same thing and making the same point, but one of them you'd reject if you had a preconceived bias. So let's say you had 3 really good Danish mid laners, right? You had Caps, you had Bjergsen, and you had Froggen.
Don't put it
one
in
of
the
them's
same.
like one of them's like, no, because Caps is nowhere near exactly in terms of Conrad longevity and greatness throughout many mets. I agree, nowhere near, but you know, a lot of people do put them in the same category. So anyway, in the first one, it's like Caps is like, give me all the resources, do all the shit, I'm gonna play all my style, whether it's detrimental or not, I'm gonna carry. Loco's like, fucking hell, he's a genius. That guy's the only way to play, really. And then Bjergsen's like, give me it all, ruin every jungler, they will all bow before me, I will eat their souls before every game, just to and then Loco's like, it had to be done. And then Froggen's just like, could I have the resources so I could carry on this late game mage? You know, like, you fucking selfish piece of shit. Why don't you learn how to play for the bot lane that can't even carry? That's you, Loco. That is you, homie. That meme is you. Whether it is or not, might be a straw man. For the purposes of this episode, that is you right now. So, hello.
All right. Dude, let's move on to your match versus Splice in the last week. I thought that was a really interesting match. What was you guys' read on Splice before going into that series in terms of like play style and how they would play?
They're not going to do anything until the Baron Nashor spawns, and when the Baron Nashor spawns, they're going to hope they get a good 5v5.
Thing is, their style must, like, I'm going to speculate here, must be the most frustrating for you to personally play against Bwipo, because like my joke about their style is they almost play anti-League of Legends. Like the job of Cersei, as far as I can tell, is just stop anything happening on the map before about 30 minutes.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying, right? And I would agree with you, if not the fact that they could.
It cut out a second then. Say it again.
Oh, I agree with you completely, other than the fact that they completely throw Vizicsacsi under the bus. You know, me and Nemesis talked about this actually, and we were like, you know what, if they went to war, right, and Vizicsacsi was the wounded guy, you know, and he was slowing the team down, they just put a bullet in his head on their own, all on their own, right?
They're not operating on the no man left behind stats, not like Private Ryan, saving Private Ryan. Yeah.
Exactly, like just go blind pick Gangplank, go blind pick like just go pick
instead of saving Private Ryan, Splice is abandoning like General Vizicsacsi, basically.
Exactly, like this is how it feels when I play against them, right? So of course I don't mind at all, right? I'm playing Urgot once when I've been trying to shove it up this guy's ass for 15 minutes straight. So yeah, it's like I would agree if they were actually trying to actively stop top lane aggression, but they trust Vizicsacsi to be able to do that on his own, right? And again, he's a good enough player to make it work, right? And that's why they're a successful team. They're third place. They do it right. So most of the resources go towards Humanoid and then Kobe eventually.
Yeah. One thing that was really interesting is when they were ahead in the game state, they didn't pressure you guys. All they kept doing was let side lane split push, and if they get caught, then they get caught. We're gonna go split push on the other side of the map, where you guys are constantly setting up vision pockets where you're trying to pick. I felt like there was like a certain item power spike they wanted to hit. Maybe it was 3 items, maybe it was 4 items, but they just were not willing to take full-on team fights until they got to that point. And team fights only started happening when you guys started Baron and they started to pick you, and then you guys started to pick them back. They were just not willing to fight at all, and it was so strange to see like a team that's ahead not willing to fight and just want to scale until they just wanted to scale more, where they could have kept putting you guys in awkward situations.
Right, absolutely. I think that in that game, due to whatever circumstance, basically what happened was that I was 2k gold ahead because of the swap, right? At some point there was a trading of sides, which again, it wasn't optimal by any means. That was like one of the decisions we made where it was like we felt like we wanted to do something. And we went for something even though the opportunity cost was far greater than the actual play, right? The play was not great. We ended up trading like basically a 1,500 gold lead on me for a 1,500 gold lead on Tristana, which usually you don't want to take that trade. Sure, for this game in specific, in hindsight, it's not a bad play because Urgot is a very specific champion. He's a front-to-back champion where if he is strong, he is unstoppable and he will decide a front-to-back team fight on his own, right? This is the strength of Urgot. And when people were discussing that Spice's comp outscaled us, I was just baffled, right? Did people forget Urgot already? The whole point of Urgot is if you fight front-to-back, I'm fearing your whole team if you don't kill me, right? And their composition was not able to kill me thanks to certain itemization choices. Randuin's Omen was perfect for them. They had Corki, Tristana, I believe. Randuin's Omen, Ninja Tabai, Adaptive Helm. Corki can't touch me. Tristana's never going to deal enough damage to kill a tank in the first place. So, of course, we're going to outscale them front to back. You have Urgot, Kai'Sa, Cassio. Why is this even a discussion, right? They're saying they outrange us, but their front line can't outrange us. What is Alistar going to do? Is he just going to AFK there? All right, he can AFK there and try to play max range, but then you're playing a 4v5 team fight. My point is, I think we gave resources in the wrong lane, even though Reckless had a very good laning phase. And it worked out because Splice wasn't willing to fight us, and when they were, they just choked. Like, I pressed E on Kobe, and I kind of just murdered him.
Yeah, they definitely forgot about Urgot. I think early game, when you solo killed the Gangplank, when you solo killed Vegetachi, I went back and looked, and I was like, oh, he must have E-flashed, and Vegetachi didn't realize it. It wasn't even E-flash. You just eat him, and people are getting randomly caught by E. I remember World's meta, when it was all Urgot Scion, no one randomly gets caught by E. Everyone's super aware of it. They are even aware of E-flash, so they don't get caught by it. But Kabe, like, randomly walked into you at a bear fight.
Walked into it, and it was got caught by E. W had everything up.
People just were not aware on how to play versus Urgot.
It was honestly, I think that fight was winnable if I went on Sejuani anyway, because again, like I think once you get the fear on Urgot, whoever's dying, by the way. This champion still does this. They never nerfed his damage output, right? They nerfed his like how beefy he can be, I think, mostly, right? I think the changes they made after his series of nerfs made him that type of champion. But I think it's just it was luck, right? Because me and Joey, I don't know if he told you this or you saw it on social media, but we decided like 2 hours on the way to the studio. You know what? Let's play Urgot. Like this is it, right? Let's just play Urgot. Even on stage, like we had 2 seconds left, and Joey said picks on. I'm like, no, let's play Urgot. Why? Because I hadn't played it in 3 months, right? I was first timing this champion. When I solo killed him, I was honestly kind of surprised by myself, and I was like, well, you know what? I played that pretty well. It's been a while, but this champion feels pretty good. All in all.
It was also really good because they played Alistar, and Alistar is one of the champions you never want to be in a situation where people have true damage execute.
Very strong. Sejuani Alistar do not have fun against her, right? And that's the idea. And if I could get big enough that their Cassio or their Tristana and Corki couldn't abuse their range to the point where they could push me out of the fight before my carries could arrive, we were going to win that game, right? Not to mention we had Rakan, which is a cheating champion almost in that sense. Like you think you're funny with your double range, right? Rakan's going to close that in no counterplay levels of speed.
Right. One thing I want to ask about was throughout both of the splits, you've had periods where the team was on streaks that were really good. And in theory, someone who was a fan could have made the case, is this the best team? Are you as good as G2? That was always on the table. Right. There's always been times where people have criticized the team and said it's like shit, or certain players have come under fire. Obviously, one of the things I've noticed has been very interesting is because during the streak periods, sure, I'm sure some Fnatic fans go too far and think, oh, this is our time, we're the best now. It means that then the context, if people don't know this, the context of talk shows is you don't just say your opinion, you also have to put it in the context of how you think your audience is taking it. So if I think that TSM fans think their team's the best, then I have to basically critique TSM in a way that they're going to think's hating on them. So along these lines, right, within your team has been one of the teams that's been way, way more I would say secluded, like stayed away from social media. There's been a few talk shows, like I say, Young Buck's been on one. Have you been on a couple? I know Reckless went on, I think, did he go on The Dive or something? No, the Euphoria. PGL, sorry, yes. So there's been a couple of times we've seen some things from you. Right. But we also heard, for example, during the losing streak to start the year, like there would be no media until a certain point in time. I was basically told internally, like we have to get like at least an even record, otherwise we're not going to do it. Now, this is different from some teams. Some teams go the other way. They want to like sort of meet the criticism immediately. Like TSM, for example, with their recent drama, tried immediately to come out and address it and say, no, that's not true, or here's our version of it. What's it been like for you inside Fnatic? Like, do you feel as though has the criticism gotten to the team at all? Does it fuck with people? Is there a reason why the team generally chooses to sort of stay away from the community when it's like that?
I think most of the players that are like on our team, like you have Broxa, you have Reckless and Hylissang, right? This is basically the core of our team, right? These are the old guard, not quite, but Reckless and Hylissang specifically, they've been there for a long time, right? They've learned you don't really gain anything from reading social media, so they don't really address the criticism part of social media, right? Of course, they have their social media that they do their stuff on, but the criticism is something that they push it away, right? They don't need that in their life. It's not even that they push it away. They don't even care, right? Like they're not interested in hearing what other people's criticism have. They're all busy problem solving themselves, right? And for me, I don't mind it, right? You can tell me right now, like, oh, you remember that game where you over and died. You love making jokes about it, right? And that's the thing. You're not wrong. I can listen to you and you're proving a point, right? You are making clear that ultimately there's someone out there that thinks I'm playing too aggressive, I'm playing too stupid, and I can take that as a bonus, right? I can just look at my own play for 5 minutes and be like, do you know what? Is this guy actually right? Honestly, yeah, sometimes. It's on me to temper that. But that's ultimately how I take criticism, right?
Yes.
I can take your opinion into account and still have the same opinion. But the thing is, I will double check whether or not you're right or wrong. Now, the thing about fans' feedback is, no offense to the fans, of course, generally speaking, they're quite far off because their understanding of the game is just not quite as complex.
I mean, I'll give you a very simple reason, okay, that'll just to make it so that fans don't feel insulted in this sense. So I did an episode of Narrative Wake recently where it was all about top lane, right? And one of the points we made on the show was that if there's even pro players who would actually at times think another pro player had misplayed, because if you have to understand, a lot of coaches and analysts, the way they see the game is it's literally the old Loco is the old Chouster thing that he said back in season 2, which is that the game of League of Legends isn't about champions and kills, it's about towers and waves. And what happens is there are times where literally a top laner will die because he's going for some CS that if he doesn't go for now, his wave state will be so fucked in 5 minutes that basically the game's ruined. So he has to gamble at one point and go for some of this CS or step forwards. Whereas to the fan who only plays solo queue, they're thinking, what an idiot, didn't he know he could die there or get ganked? It's like, yeah, he does, but he knows that actually the opportunity is worth it at this point so that the rest of the game isn't uphill, if you know what I mean. And that's not even a diss. That's just where you have to know some very advanced like concepts in the background before you can look at the example.
Also, fans watch with full vision and they're like, holy fuck, why did they risk there? Like, their jungler's pathing up here. Like, aren't they fucking, like, fan criticism, I think, is so meaningless. I even think a lot of times, like, fellow player criticism or even like
it's not meaningless, it's just it doesn't have that much value to a pro player, you know what I mean? Like, to each other it's cool. Like I always tell people, listen, Reddit and Twitter is the place for hot takes. If you want to post a hot take, put it on Reddit and Twitter. We can all ignore it if we don't want it, but it's just that, like, obviously we're not going to take your comment off Twitter and analyze it as though it was like fucking Coma sent an email to Bwipo, like, here's my thoughts on how you played that game. Like, I think you'd listen differently if that email came than if it was a tweet, you know.
Well, that's the thing. I try to hold me to that standard that I don't actually, right? Because ultimately it's feedback. I can take it, right? I'm not, my feelings aren't getting hurt if you told me I died at 15 minutes in like an idiot, right? You can voice it saying, wow, what an idiot. He died at 15 minutes. But ultimately, the essence of the feedback is I died at 15 minutes. It's on me to take that as, you know what, is he right?
Sure.
If he's right, I'm not losing anything by reading it, right? If he's wrong, I can just dismiss it. Well, fuck, I lost 2 minutes of my time reading what he had to say, right? Who cares, right? So obviously, when I'm emotional after a game, I don't take it that way.
Sure. Naturally,
right? But before the game, after the game, I mean, like a day after, right? I read Reddit and I'm like, all right, you know what? I went 1-7 on Rengar. Let's have a look what they have to say, right? And they're like, okay, they overextended. They took back fights. This is all true, right? And at some point, you're gonna, just by revising those basics, right? Because ultimately, name me a sport that isn't based on the basics, right? Like, name me a sport that doesn't rely on some really solid fundamentals to be the best in the world.
As far as I can tell, the best player always has the best fundamentals.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying, right? So me looking at people criticizing the fundamentals, because honestly, that's usually the only thing they have advanced understanding of to the point where it's relevant, is never a bad thing.
I'll say, by the way, I actually kind of agree because that's one of the ways I've tried over my own career to take on sort of feedback, which is basically what I do is I take. I'll do the equivalent of like what people say you should do in League. I take the equivalent of the nameplate off. I don't look who said it. I don't look what flair they have. I try to look at the comment and imagine, right? Take all the personal elements out. So if there's an insult in there, ignore that. If they put it in a way where it's like snarky, ignore that. Look at the essence of what they're saying, right? And sometimes you can find a really good point. So I'll give you an example. Yeah. People back in the day used to complain that my interviews were too long, right? And now that's actually terrible technical advice because, like, think about the logic, right? Well, for the next interview, I'll just make it an hour long and I'll cut it for the first 10 minutes and that'll be the interview. Wouldn't make any sense, right? The point of what they were really probably saying behind that, the gist of it was probably, they mean it's too long because at some point it got boring for them. So what they really meant was maybe parts of it were too weak. Maybe one part was just way too boring for them and they couldn't get to the end. Exactly. Maybe there was a part where I left in a question that to me was like some obscure thing I was interested in, but no one else would really care. So like the concept there is, if you're going to make it long, each part has to carry itself. Each part, what you do is you find sort of what's relevant within the advice. But as I say, oftentimes what will put people off is how it's wrapped up and the phrasing of it might be insulting or might be too simplistic or might even just not be that right on the technical level. But sometimes behind it, it might actually have a grain of truth that's really important. I agree. I think it's not a terrible approach.
Or maybe it's coming from
like you said, you've got to be able to take it. If you're somebody who's going to get emotional from it, stay away. It's not your shit.
Or maybe it's coming from someone with a TSM flare and you just ignore it.
Well, I literally did just say, again, viewers, did I not say at the beginning to remove the flare and ignore that? I'm pretty sure I did, but Locodoco himself didn't actually listen to what I said. Therefore, he did actually completely miss that. Just as when he left the room, he didn't mute his mic, even though that meant we could all hear him setting up his 10 o'clock massage for after this interview. So,
what the thing is, for me to mute the mic on Discord, I have to go and shift through it so it'll show on screen. But I always mute the mic whenever I'm like drinking or eating, making too much noise, so the stream doesn't hear it. So sorry for Duncan and Bwipo, but stream didn't hear it.
It's okay.
Right, fair enough. We still heard it though. I wondered, what did it mean? You have to peel the carrot very carefully.
What?
Never mind. Right, whatever. Maybe I mentioned that. Keep going. Yeah.
One thing about criticism and one thing about internet criticism that I think is really important. So people think of like criticism, because usually when criticism is coming, it's from like your coaches or from your teachers or from your parents, like someone above you, someone with more experience. So you are supposed to take it to heart. I think Reddit criticism, Twitch criticism, and YouTube criticism is extremely good for certain things, but terrible for certain things. It's a hive mind think tank where they'll see every little detail and they'll be able to give very good general things on like something that's wrong. So they'll be able to point out something that's wrong very easily, but they're terrible at giving you actual solutions. So as like a creator or as like a pro player, like they'll be able to point out minute details on like stuff that you did wrong and very good things about things that are obvious, but they'll never be able to give you the actual solution. So I think they are incredibly useful for certain things, but never just take it one-to-one, like as you would from like a mentor or someone you respect.
Close on that topic, just use your brain. When there's criticism, just think about it. Like, what does this guy actually want to tell me, right? Like, what does this guy... Because I think, when I read Fnatic fans, play it, I'm thinking, do these people actually want me to get benched? No, they don't. They just want me to be the superstar. They want me the best. They want me to be the best player Europe has, right? They want me to be the best player in the world and carry the team to every single victory possible, right? That's what they want, right? So are they really saying that because they're butthurt because they don't like me? No. They're saying that because they want me to be better, right? And I'm happy, right? That makes me happy. People want me to be good at this game. That's a good thing. Like, I'm happy that people want me to win, right? And ultimately, fans giving me negative criticism is them telling me, please do better, right? Win games for us.
Yeah, by the way, there's also a clear distinction between, like, for example, if TSM lose, like, I don't even really hate them that much, but whatever, for the sake of hilarity, I do think it's funny as fuck. Like, I enjoy them losing. Obviously, a TSM fan who gets mad at TSM for losing is just frustrated they didn't win. He's not actually enjoying that they lose. He's not loving flaming the players in his own team. So I agree, like, there might even be a point within what he's saying, because really what he's trying to tell you is, like, improve this so that we can win. But unfortunately, if he expresses it in a super frustrated manner, it's going to come out and seem super toxic. Like, oh shit, I should just ignore what this guy's saying completely.
As creators,
to filter that.
As creators and players, the worst criticism you can get is no criticism and no interest. Like, you'll know TSM is dead, not when TSM loses and there's hundreds of angry comments. You'll know TSM is dead, and you'll know a certain like a team is dead when there aren't comments, when there aren't criticism, when people actually genuinely don't give a fuck.
Well said. That's the end goal, guys. If we can get to a world where TSM's completely irrelevant, doesn't exist anymore, I agree with Loco. That would be a utopia. Mm-hmm. So I look forward to one day living in that paradise where it's only Cloud9. All the fans in NA are fans of Cloud9, Team Liquid, and then the people who are just like really awkward losers who secretly think that they should be good. They can all be CLG fans, I guess. You know, everyone's got. Listen, you got to have it's not like boy bands. There's someone for everyone. You can all relate to someone within that mix there. You know,
in your fucked up world where TSM is dead and there's no TSM fans, just TSM fans will become fans of another team. It'll be like. TL fans will be the new TSM fans, or C9 fans will be the new TSM fans.
Yeah, but they'll be diluted out. No, they'll be diluted out by the cool Cloud9 fans and by the sort of loner, weird, artistic CLG fans and the rich kid TM Liquid fans. Instead of being all harnessed into one group like fucking orcs in Lord of the Rings, who absolutely are evil and you can justifiably destroy without any moral implications. Just saying, right? Anyway, this has gotten all sidetracked now with talk of TSM again. When TSM isn't mentioned on any European shows, they'll also be irrelevant. So, right, let's get into the LEC. So we've got the playoffs before us now. Yep. And the interesting thing is, again, for people who are NA fans and don't know, LEC this year has a different format. Instead of just being a single elim bracket, what they do is they have the first round matchup, same as you do in NA, but the top two teams don't get a bye and skip forwards. They go into kind of their own upper bracket, as it were. So Fnatic and G2 this time will play a best of 5. The winner goes straight to the final. Same as last split, it was Origin and G2 played a best of 5, winner goes straight. But the key thing is the loser goes down and plays the team that advances all the way from the other opponents. So what's interesting about the LEC format is you always get the first and second seed play a game no matter what. So actually, I kind of like that aspect. I think it's pretty cool. It means that you never get the scenario where, like this split, for example, is a very, really obvious one because the two teams everyone wants to see play is G2 and Fnatic. But if you were on other sides of the bracket, someone might upset you. We might never get that match, but we get it no matter what. But that also means that Bwipo isn't playing for a few weeks now, like till next week, basically. Maybe 2 weeks from now, actually, is it?
I'm playing next week.
Next week, that's right. And so he can comment on all these first round matches because he doesn't even know if he's playing any of these teams yet. He might not be yet. Maybe he wins and goes to the final and never plays any of them. So in theory, not as much usual bias as when people are literally sitting waiting for this team to win or lose and then they know they're going to play them next. So since you already referenced Splice earlier, let's do that matchup first. So Splice plays Rogue, and an interesting detail to add, another wrinkle that I didn't know actually, was they also made it so for these matchups, Splice, was it that Splice got to pick who they played? I think it was something like that, right?
I believe that, let me think about how this works. I think that the third place team gets to choose between the 5th and 6th.
Right, there you go. So Splice
the fourth place
to play Rogue.
Fourth place has like the protection from third place.
Yes.
And
so that was Schalke in this case.
Yes.
So
Schalke.
basically, the key reason I'm bringing that up is that means that Splice chose to play Rogue rather than Vitality, who just crept in. So that in itself is interesting. Like, what do you think of that? The fact that they chose Rogue over Vitality.
I mean, again, Vitality's considered to be a topside heavy team, but I haven't really felt it this split that much. Like in the past, they were much more like that. So again, a topside heavy team against a team that doesn't really want to contest topside at all. You want to avoid that, first of all. And then in general, I feel like Splice is a team that likes to prepare, likes to be ready. Vitality is not a team you're ready for.
Vitality's weird.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't prepare for Vitality. You're either ready or you're not, right? You get ran over or you don't. And Rogue in that sense is probably much more, how do I say, methodical in their preparation, right? They're going to be trying to play the way they have been playing the game for the past few games in this split. Whatever has been successful over the past split is what they're going to try and recreate, and that's something you can analyze. You can have a response to that. Whereas Vitality, you know what? Maybe they wake up, maybe Jizuke wakes up and says, you know what, I'm going to play Echo and Smurf on some kids. Or maybe he wakes up, I'm going to play LeBlanc, I'm going to play Silas. You don't know what he's going to play. You don't know what's going to happen. Cabochard might play Karma, he might play Kled, he might play Lucian. You don't fucking know. You haven't got a clue what they're going to draft. You haven't got a clue what they're going to play, how they're going to play the game. I don't know at this point, right? And that's the thing. That's kind of their strength at this point, because in the past it was, you know what, you know where Jizuka's going at level 3, you know where Mowgli's going at level 3. At this point, I haven't actually felt that, right? I haven't felt like Vitality bombed resources into their top side. So in that sense, avoiding an opponent where you don't actually know what's going to happen makes sense in a best of 5 series, right? You might as well take the team where you're like, you know what, we've beaten them twice this split, I imagine. I'm not sure, actually. I think they're 2-0 against Rogue.
Dactyl Fiddle, also something that's weird. Do you think they made the right choice in picking Rogue over Vitality?
It's difficult to say. It's obviously their opinion, right? Last split we chose Vitality specifically because we knew what they were gonna like. We had a feeling like this is how they're gonna play when it comes to a best of 5, right? When everything's on the line, they're gonna try and break top lane. I told my coaching staff, I'm never ever going to let this guy carry a game. I'm just not gonna let that happen. And coaching staff believed in that. We chose Vitality. Splice might have been like, you know what, Rogue is a team that's not fast enough to actually get to a point where we're not going to get our items. So let's just play the game. Whereas Vitality, you know, maybe they're explosive enough that the game's not going to reach a point where the deciding fight is when they're comfortable. Whereas Rogue, I feel like they're slow enough where Splice is going to feel comfortable when the game is decided.
Yeah, it feels like it was more just a stylistic choice on that one. Like he says, that it's just a logical angle to not go in. Like, obviously, why would you want, if you're Splice, to go into a team that's going to go fucking balls deep in the early game? Like, that sounds like the best chance to lose the opening series. And also, the final aspect you should also add in that's a bit of a meta context is, if you're a team like Splice, it's actually even more important not to lose the first best of 5 because you want to ensure the circuit points. It's not about even winning necessarily. You want to make sure you win at least your first series because it's going to help you go towards the goal and get a better seed. So, let's talk about the matchup directly then, Splice versus Rogue. Because one of the things I found very interesting is, like, obviously Rogue upgraded their roster big time for the summer. And if you look by the end, they got quite a few wins under their belt. But I even think if you look at this roster, is why I want to ask you specifically, is I'm amazed that it took them so long to swap Finn into the lineup, because I feel as though Prophet has his own game and he's been an LEC player for a while now, but I think if they'd have had Finn from the beginning of the split, they might even have gone higher for me. I thought they looked like a pretty good swap in. So what do you think of Finn and generally how they use top lane in Rogue?
Honestly, like I'm not sure. Like them using top lane, I feel like it's a team that's like they're really strong jungle support together. Like I think they have a very high emphasis on having those two roam together. Like they do it more than any other team. And then they decide to play for Larson mostly, right? Like that's how it feels when I play against Rogue. I feel like Larson is the mid laner that gets the most resources out of all LEC teams as of right now. That's how it feels. Also talking to Nemesis, obviously he has an opinion on that, and he also agreed that that's what he thinks. So in that sense, they have their 3-man unit, right? So you want to have people that do well on their own and are complementary to that 3-man unit. Whereas I feel like Prophet on his own is a very strong player, maybe stronger than Finn. I think the difference is, how do I put it?
Doesn't matter.
Insignificant. Yeah, it's insignificant. I think they're both strong. Okay. Like they're going to do their thing. Finn, I feel like, is much more complementary to that 3-man unit. Much like, for example, maybe Woolite is more complementary than Hikyu when it comes to that 3-man unit. Because again, I think that the difference between Woolite and Hikyu is insignificant in my opinion, right? I don't think there's much of a difference if I were had to choose which player do I take. But in that sense, that 3-man unit gets complemented the best by Finn, and Woolite specifically is how I feel about their roster decisions and why it's been the most successful. At least that's what I can imagine. Because ultimately, their way of playing the game is resources into Larson, and then jungle support will help Larson on the sideline rather than the normal way of having your AD carry plus jungle plus support contest mid lane, right? Mm-hmm. That's not really what they do. Oftentimes, of course, Larson comes mid lane, right? That's something I noticed. So it's more of a 4-man thing, but again, the core is mid jungle support, and then they have their AD carry just latch onto it basically. So in that sense, it makes sense that Finn is performing better because I imagine communication is much better. So, you know, when do you want your top laner to come move and try to take objectives? When do you want him to flank? When do you want him to start a fight? This is obvious, right? When you're a team that doesn't have to play around one guy's skill because he's that much better, it usually is better to have somebody that can actually communicate and set things up with the rest of the players, right? Again, I don't know how good or bad Prophet's English is. I don't want to take anything away from him. I think he's a good player. He's definitely up there individually. I personally think he's better than Finn individually. Okay. But I can see how the difference in communication, especially if you're trying to play around mid lane, is something you would rather have. You would rather have the better side of.
Even more so than just like player playstyle, I feel like in a lot of rosters, it just comes down to how well people get along. Like problem solving and like I think like just like team roster management isn't good enough where people can resolve conflicts fast enough. It just, you go with the roster that creates less conflict and that can just work well as a unit, even if it doesn't make sense in-game wise, or even if there's a more refined roster that might do better in terms of playstyle. This roster just works together better as people, and you just go with that.
Right, and it's also like an idea of demanding respect, right? Like Prophet, he has a name, right? He's been around in LEC for years. He's been to SKT. He's been places, right? He's had success in a way, shape, or form, and maybe the players around him that are rookies feel like he commands too much respect, right? Well, for example, the reason why me and Soaz were always able to work together is because he was a very lax guy, right? He's a chill dude. He's a nice guy. Like anyone can have a good time talking to him. That's why it was easy for me to be a substitute in the sense that like we were able to communicate with each other. If I had to, like let's say so I was the type of guy that, like obviously with his achievements and whatnot, someone there was like a brick wall that I have to break through as a rookie to try and even start communicating before I feel comfortable around this guy. I don't think I would have had a very good communication system at all, right? And even then, I'm not to say that our communication was perfect at all times between me and Soaz, but I know that this was a very big deal for my success as well, right? Being able to talk to him about everything and in and outside of the game, right? Getting his perspective, being able to find a way where I would be relevant for the team in times where I feel like he would be less, and then the opposite for him, right? And so in that sense, maybe Prophet has that going around him. He's got Larson, which is a rookie, Inspired as a rookie, and I believe Woolad's not a rookie, is he? He's not.
No, he's not a rookie.
No. He used to be in AUL 6 years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
Rocket,
but anyway, like the mid laner and the jungler are both rookies, right? So do they feel super comfortable talking to Prophet as they do with Finn? I doubt it.
Actually, I have a question, because I guess you're one of the only people in the world who plays the same position as Soaz who could answer this question, which is, what is it like to play on Soaz's team? Because you obviously were in the bot lane with Soaz in the top lane. So it's pretty unique in that sense, right?
Right. What is it like playing on Soaz in a team, huh? Let me think. How do I want to answer this question? It's fun. I think he's a good teammate. Like, that's one thing that I do want people to understand, right? On social media, he's had his phases where he's voiced his opinion in a rather negative manner, I would say, even when I was not a part of the team. Yeah, when I was not a part of the team, this was something he did, right? We all know the dog champ tweet and whatnot. But ultimately, he's a good teammate. He's a good guy. He wants to win. He just does get emotional about it, right? It's just how it is. Everyone can be a cunt. He was a cunt sometimes. I was a cunt sometimes. That's just ultimately how it is. But all in all, me playing on a team with him, we were always trying to solve. He was always part of a solution, right? He was trying to solve bad situations. And when it was going well, he was a good teammate. So ultimately, a good experience, I think.
Sure. One part about this matchup I think is pretty interesting is I notice around summer, mainly because Splice has done even better. Now, finally, the hype for Humanoid is actually fully going. Now people even have him as an MVP candidate and stuff. Whereas, like, I already thought in spring he showed he was a very, very good player, like one of the clear top prospects. But as a result, in this particular matchup, if you are someone who's only watched a few of the big name LEC games, you're going to think, oh, well, that's going to be a huge advantage, mid lane for Splice. Like, it isn't, by the way. Like, if in case anyone hasn't been watching, Larson is also a very hot prospect for the future. But the key thing that's interesting for me is the best way to phrase it is this. When I was doing my call-in show with Veteran, someone who's a fan in the chat who was trying to put their own argument together tried to describe Larson as the next Froggen, but as a diss, right? They were saying, like, no, he plays too safe and stuff. And it's like, first of all, that isn't a diss to me. And secondly, I even think it's a great analogy, actually. It has actually a lot more in common with that mindset than some of the leader caps, like super aggro type mid laners. Like, Larson is much more a player who's like, give me the resources. I'm always going to do great in lane. I'm going to absolutely carry on all these mages. If you put me in this right team fight scenario, I'll go to work. He's actually the guy who unfortunately kind of like, he got lost in the mix of like, people knew the 3 rookies that came up in spring. They maybe had heard about Magic Felix because of solo queue shit. But Larson actually didn't get that much shine because, unfortunately, the team he played for in the National Leagues, the LDLC team, who, by the way, was actually the favourite to win EU Masters, went out in the fucking like group stage or something ridiculous. So, unfortunately, when he was supposed to get his shine, he never got it. So, when he came into Rogue, now I think people didn't expect much, but I think he's a pretty good player.
I mean, I don't disagree with you. It's just that Kale was champion.
Wait a second, it counts. Say it again, will you?
In that tournament, Kale was the best champion in the game. He got it twice, and he was utterly useless on it. And that's kind of like the meme that Nemesis has, right? Because Nemesis, obviously, rookie mid laners, he's one of them, right? He has an opinion on a lot of mid laners, right? And that's like how he like. So Nemesis thought it was the most broken champion in the game. Proved it as well, by the way. This champion was absurd, right? And he kind of dropped the ball there. So in that sense, I agree with you completely. It's just he wasn't without fault in that specific tournament. right? So when he didn't get a shine, I do feel like he could have pushed that further and like made that his moment. That's my only argument to what you just said.
Actually, wait a minute. What was that talking about? Why did I say he was in LDLC? Who am I thinking of?
Yes, I think
Whatever. Obviously, he was in Rogue Academy because otherwise he couldn't have been promoted in the main team. I don't know why. Yeah. I mixed up the fact that LDLC went out early with the fact that Rogue did.
Right.
Whatever. We all know.
Yeah, Rogue was actually considered one of the best teams as well.
They did, but unfortunately, obviously, they cannibalized their academy team to make the LEC team better. That's why they did. Well. Yes, there we go.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, again, like I think he's gonna get the resources. You know, his team does play around that, I feel, at least in the games. They do put him in a situation where he feels comfortable, and he does perform, right? He does carry the games, else they wouldn't be here in playoffs, is my way of thinking about it, right? Is he as good as Caps? I don't think so. Is he as good as Nemesis, Humanoid? Maybe not. I don't think so. But he's good enough that he's winning games and he's getting resources, even against a team like us, right? They did beat us. So it's an interesting matchup to see from the mid lane, right? Because I think Humanoid is he's more on his own, right? He's playing more champions that make things happen on their own. Akali, Kiana is more what he's making his name on, right? So that's what's interesting for me is to see, like, if Rogue decide to go for these champions, are they going to just ban out the Akali, ban out the Kiana? Are they going to attack that champion pool so that Larson doesn't have to deal with all this mobility, all this burst damage and whatnot, so he can feel a bit more comfortable in team fights? Or are they just going to go clash styles, right? Let's just draft the Azir. Well, he got nerfed a bit, but you know what I mean. Are we going to draft the control mage into the assassin, or are we going to try and match, right? Because that's the interesting thing, because I'm sure like Splice has had success with picking their own scaling champions, right? So
of course.
I think this is where, I think from a drafting perspective, this is the pace of the game, right? The game will be paced around the mid lane picks, from what I can tell.
I just don't see Rogue winning this one, because as we talked about with Humanoid and just rest of Splice, they're kind of a level check. If you aren't good enough as them, like, you just have no way of beating them. They will get to a certain point in the game, and once they get to that point, they're really fucking good. Especially Kabe and Humanoid, whenever they get to team fights and it is set up well. But if you kind of shove them, or if you trip them up as they're getting to that point, then they really struggle. And I don't think Rogue is good enough to really like shake them in what they want to do. Like, even in the game versus you guys, like, they were slowly getting to that point, and then you guys started creating vision pockets, started to pick them off. Is Rogue really good enough to challenge them in that way in 3 games out of 5? This one for me is like a very easy Splice win. Like, maybe Rogue will like contest them in certain manners, but I just don't really see them winning 3 games out of 5.
Honestly, I don't think we beat them by picking them off. I know we had a series of moments where we were picking off his Chacho on the sideline, as you do. Hilly has a joke, right? He's like, yeah, for however long this guy's been playing the game, the guy has, forever since I've known him, gotten caught on the sideline, and he will keep doing that, right? That's his thing. But I think we beat them because they just executed team fights incredibly poorly, right? You can tell me that's uncharacteristically. I don't even know what I just said, but you get my point. But ultimately, I think Splice is the type of team where if you keep cranking up the heat, their players break. That's how I felt, right? Like, every single fight we were playing, it was getting easier and easier to win. That's how I felt when I was playing the game, right? Maybe it was because obviously we had good scaling and we were getting stronger and stronger, but it felt they weren't as crisp, right? Tristana getting caught like that, that's not what I'm looking for, right? And like, that's not crisp, right? He should be able to input buffer his W or flash it. I shouldn't be able to just fear everybody and kill them straight after that. That fight set the tone for the game for me, right? It's like, this was what Splice is supposed to be good at, right? Executing a fight like that. They completely flopped, which is what, for me, begs the question is like, well, if you're going to mis-execute that badly in a team fight, and then obviously the next one and the one after that, because I felt like at some point, team fights weren't even close anymore. Humanoid gets caught by Kaisa and whatnot. It just felt like it got too hot, right? And they just crumbled, and it was very easy to close out the game after that. But maybe it's much easier against a bunch of rookies. Maybe it's easier against Rogue. Maybe Rogue doesn't have that.
Would you take Splice to win the series then?
I would definitely say Splice is going to win the series.
For sure.
Just for me, it's like how convincingly are they going to win it is the question for me, right?
Yes.
I'm sure Splice will win. I just think that Rogue can put up a very decent fight. And again, if they successfully play through their jungle and support synergy together with mid lane, I think they actually have a good shot of taking a game or two.
Yeah. Similar for me. Yeah, go on.
I mean, as you said, like, when things got too hot, like that's where Splice started fucking up. I don't think Rogue's gonna be able to make it as hot as you guys did. And one thing that doesn't get touched enough is I think Larson was really good. I think Inspired was up and down. Was it better towards the end?
Right.
They are rookies. They have never been in playoff situations. Like despite it takes a very special rookie to be able to kind of pull off the same thing you did in regular season as playoffs.
Sure.
So I think that's also going to play a factor. So there's just so many things pointing at this is going to be a Splice win.
I do actually personally think Rogue will take at least one game though, because even though you say that you don't think they have the tools, I think they have the tools. It's just like I think it's actually more what you just said there. I don't know if it'll come out in the playoffs, and also whether you can win one game doesn't mean you can win 3 out of 5. Like that's much more of an impetus to do so. So the way that they can win the game in Rogue is through support and jungle. So Inspired can definitely get shit going early in the game. Some of the shit he does is borderline genius. It's just that beyond that, he's not a complete player yet. Like he definitely has holes in his game. Vander, like if you want to attack Splice's mid game, some of the map rotations I've seen them make since Vander came up to Rogue look pretty good actually. Sometimes they can find people, they can get a pick off on someone. Like that's not impossible. They can get in the game, contrasted to some of the other teams at the bottom of the league who would have easily lost to Splice. But at the same time, there's no reason they should win the series because, like, if you notice, I only picked supportive elements as the advantage there. Like in terms of the laners, I think the Splice players outclass them. So I'll nearly always take the team that has the better laners over the team that has like a really sick jungler or something like that. That's not enough for me. You're probably not going to win a series off that in League of Legends, unfortunately.
I mean, 80 carry difference is substantial too. Like, I haven't pointed it out, but again, Kobe is significantly better than Woolite and Hiku. I think both.
Oh, of course.
So that's obviously a bit of an alarm bell ringing, right? You're playing into a team like Splice. You want to have the firepower in the 80 carry role. Of course, I've played with Reckless ever since I made the LEC, so the necessary firepower. In fact, I've always believed he overpowered him in that sense. So for me, it was never something I had to think about, right? Sure. But I've always thought he was a better player. But again, I can imagine other teams are like, wait, if we don't actually match some of the late game team fights coming out from Kobe, we're going to have a hard time. So ultimately, jungle support synergy, I think, again, what's going to matter is how well jungle support and mid lane together, because if Splice have gaps in their jungle support play, they're going to get punished, I feel. But again, they're a team that prepares for this. They're going to know Rogue is going to want to do this.
Sure.
And I'm going to expect that Splice is ready for that and is going to have their answer. One last thing to touch up on is champion pools. I think Inspired, for example, is a very good Evelyn player. This is a perfect champion against a team like Splice, right? Evelyn's a very slow champion, wants to scale, make picks. The game wants to go slow, right? I'd love to see this type of champion come out against the Sejuani that Splice has such a high priority on, right? This is a matchup that was tested last year, saw some success, never really caught on, but this is just another example of stuff I'd like to see Rogue pull off, right? The Kiana top lane, this is a Finn-specific thing, right? He's the guy that played enough Kiana and solo queue to make it work in a solo lane like top lane. Again, he's the only guy that plays a top lane in the world right now. He's the only guy that has a competitive game on top lane Kiana, at least in the top 5 regions. He made it work. He got a win off of that. So the question is through draft, can they use the niches their rookie players bring? Because this is one of the things Fnatic did really well for me when I was going up on the stage. Is the niches I was bringing as a rookie, they were facilitated by my team. The fact that I was a very aggressive Sion player, put my foot on, like I would literally shove my foot down someone's throat playing Sion of all champions or Ornn of all champions, right? And
that is the most hilarious one, isn't it, mate? Like you have like he said before, I always use that analogy. That's why it's quite famous now. Like people do think of you like stylistically as the EU Marin. But what's funny is both of you are also associated with champions that don't make any sense for that playstyle. Like he's famous for Maokai and you're famous for Ornn, which are like not in any
Ornn
way that playstyle. But that's why though, mate, is because you two did play those champions, not the way the other Maokai and Ornn plays. You played them as though you still going to carry the lane, right?
Exactly, and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing from Rogue, right? I want to see that Kiana flex that's only specific to Rogue, right? They're the only team that's going to flex at the top lane, get that better matchup in jungle, get the better matchup mid lane. Maybe Splice decides to take it out of the equation entirely. They're going to contest that pick. That's also lovely about this series, right? We love seeing contested picks like Akali and Kiana. Every fan loves that. That's going to be contested in this series. So again, from the draft onwards, I want to see some creativity because I'm a rookie, right? I know. I was a rookie.
You were in the past year.
I was the past year. My bad. I'm no longer a rookie. Sometimes I think of that. Think of myself as a rookie because it's more fun that way. I'll be honest. It's more fun to be just like experience it like it's the first time, right? Just go on stage like I would. I don't feel any different than I did last year. I'll give you that much. But my point is, use your rookie strengths, right? They got to the LEC stage by cheesing people in solo queue playing Evelyn. Do you really think that he doesn't know how to kill people on Evelyn better than LEC pros that don't actually know what the fuck this champion's supposed to do, how to play around it? Absolutely not, right? If I had to play against that shit, I'll be honest, I'm like, we played a fun match, right? Like basically, we played a match where I was playing King top into his Evelyn. And I'm like, what a cunt, like who plays this shit? Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm saying. But in a serious game, if you actually have to step up and play against this, you need to know what you're doing, right? You need to be ready for it. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to be. I'll tell you that much. There's no other player that I know of, right, that would pull out this champion out of nowhere, right? Rengar top, right? It didn't work the way I wanted it to, but ultimately that was the strength behind it, right? Do you think any of the players that I pulled it out on stage had played more than 1 or 2 scrim games, maybe against me playing it, or seen it in solo queue? Rarely, right? And this is the strength the rookies bring, because they've done it 100 times in their solo queue games.
There's some teams that want to play a certain way and they have their set style and they'll fit players into that. I think Splice is a really good one. Their coach is very well spoken and it seems like he has a very strong idea on how the game should be played and he's fitting players into those pieces. And then there's also teams that's kind of every piece of the Buffalo. They take all the strengths their players has and they try to make a team comp or a play style that best suits that. Like, it isn't right or wrong, but I do think it's interesting. Like, teams go at it a different way. Not every team is, like you said, utilizing the rookie, and not every team is just set in stone, but it is different.
Right.
I would say as a result for me, like I say, on the Rogue side, Inspired and Vander, they're the players that can probably be the game changers. On the Fnatic side, not Fnatic side, on the Splice side, I would say in counter to the same exact factors, I think Cersei is the guy who could just shut the whole game down. If that guy has like a really, really strong series, he can be a very, very good jungler. If he game plans correctly, it's game over. None of that's going to matter, the support junglers. You're not going to be able to do anything.
Well, one of the benefits Splice has, I imagine, right, because they have Duke, right, which is well spoken, has this very strong opinion, is that he's going to influence his players as well, right? He's going to influence his jungler, right? So if you have a coach that is very is opinionated on how to play the jungle, that can help in preparation as a jungler, right? Having someone that's also going over the VODs and feeding you information will obviously help you in making stronger pathings, and that's why I think Xerxes in a best of 5 will show up even better than in a best of 1, because I imagine Duke and his coaching staff are the type of people that are going to go through every single one of Inspired's game and just grind out his thought process.
Also, Loco, if some teams have the like every part of the buffalo approach, then I guess that G2 basically can't eat buffalo meat. They choke on it, They can't. Oh, I can't get it down. Feng Fu buffalo. Oh, fucking hell. Meanwhile, they just tear it up all like real good teams. I don't know how that ever works, but whatever. We'll leave that from heroes to zeros, as they say. Right. So, what about the other series then? So, Schalke versus Vitality.
All right.
Right. I've got a question for you, Bwipo. In usual fashion, you can interpret any way you want and answer any way you want, but I'm going to ask it in a very rude, obnoxious way, because why break the habit of a lifetime? So Schalke, to me, a lot of people like to talk shit on Splice, right, and be like, oh, it's so boring, everything's 35 minutes. But even though they're right on the surface, there's a lot going on there. Like, Cersei isn't an idiot the way he's pathing. It's quite interesting, actually. Right. The way that they allow Kobe to get the farm to be a late game carry, I think is quite interesting. The way a humanoid, like, actually sometimes doesn't have an advantage, but he's playing in a disadvantageous situation and doing well. I'm sure he's a really good individual player. Those are all interesting factors. To me, the most fucking boring team in the LEC is Schalke. These are the people, right, who like they work a 9-to-5 job, like they put on their bowler cap every day, they go out with the briefcase, goodbye, dear. They go away, they just go to the office, they just literal pencil pushers, just yep, the boss. Oh, yeah, I'll be there at the meeting at 11. Do all that. They have their lunch, which is a prepared sandwich, always the same, just ham and butter and the bread, maybe a little bit of cheese. No pickle, no mustard, nothing. It's just ham. They drink a glass of normal milk, maybe half fat because they're scared about the weight or something. They still don't know that actually fat doesn't make you fat, but whatever. They drink the thing. They do their job right. They go home at exactly 5 o'clock. They go home on the subway. They get back home. They come in, like the kids are there. The kids are like, and then the night when they put the kids to bed after, reading them about a story, Dr. Seuss story, maybe trying to get a bit edgy. Ooh, it's a little bit crazy. Oh, the Lorax. Like, that's their idea of like thrilling. They then have normal, incredibly monotone, boring missionary position sex when no one comes, and then at the end they just turn out the light, they turn out the light, they finish reading a book, and then they go to sleep. Right? They wake up. That's Schalke, right? They're the most boring motherfuckers in the whole game. Nothing they do is interesting. They've got like one good player, and even he is literally some sort of relic throwback to season 3 AD carry, who's just like, just give me a normal AD carry. I'm an AD carry, sir, not a marksman. You will use my correct pronouns. I will get all the farm, and I will be carrying at exactly 25 minutes. I'll see you all there. It's like, this team is in the modern day when you can do all this crazy shit. Like, they don't do any of it. Like, what do you think of Schalke?
I think that comes down to Dylan Falco, really. Like, this is how Dylan Falco wants his team to be, right? Like, this is what he wants his team to be. He wants to have a reliable way
of course.
Right. He wants to have a reliable way of winning the game, and he doesn't want any crazy shit to happen around that, right? And I think that's a respectable way of playing. That's what's got him several playoffs.
I think it's an outdated way of playing.
Well, maybe it is, but
depends what team you have, though. To be fair, look at the players he has. He doesn't exactly have G2's lineup, does he? Like, he's doing working with what he can.
Again, ultimately, last year we were doing crazy shit too, right? He was pushing for crazy picks, crazy stuff, but I think he's a realistic person in that sense. I think he's very realistic in the sense that, you know what, if I'm sending my lineup on stage, I'm going to send them on stage the way I think they should play, right? And I think ultimately, and I don't think anybody's going to argue with this one, he wants his team to go on stage, having Mr. AD carry, go to 25 minutes, and go to town when it's time, right?
There's a balance.
I don't think either of you are going to disagree with me on that one.
No. I agree with you.
That's what you would expect.
But there's a balance of doing things, and watching some Schalke games, they just completely destroy that balance. There's a play they do. It was against Vitality, where 4 people do bot. The mid, jungle, support AD, they all do bot. And it was out of timing. It was really weird because mid lane left before he shoved out his lane to do that dive. And they got the dive, they killed the Ezreal, and they got the turret. But for that, they lost mid turret. And they lost control over mid area. Like, they just sacrificed way too much just to get bottom going. They do stuff like 3-man teleport bot side. The team should be bot side oriented. They do have upset. They don't have spectacular carries in other lanes. But they took it way too much. And the team became way too one-dimensional. And I think there could have been a better product for Schalke, even with the players they have. They just shifted way too much towards bot side. And
wait a minute. If you say that, then you have to say what it would be. So, like,
just
how would you take
a little bit less, just a little bit less towards bot side. Like, those kind of 4-man bot side plays where you give up mid turret for it is never worth. And they do that on a regular basis. These 3-man bot side teleports can be worth, but it comes at such a huge price, and they don't consider that. Just the pendulum has swung way too much towards that side, and they need to reel it a little bit back. I do agree they have to be upset oriented team, and their ultimate win condition is upset hitting items and then team fighting, but it's just way too much. And I'm not sure how Odo play. I'm not sure if Odo's level of play and what he's showing is because they play so much towards bot side, or just him underperforming. But Odo is someone I thought they would have utilized a lot more.
Right. I think that honestly, I think they're at their best when they play a stable game. I think any team that relies on their carry to carry wants to play a stable game, right? That's why Splice is considered the best at this, right? Are they actually the best late game team fighting team? I'm sorry. Hell no. G2 is better, we're better. Straight up. My opinion. Like,
even Splice.
Say what you want. Easily, we're just better than Splice at late game team fights. So is G2, right? So in that sense, I don't think Splice is considered a late game team fighting team because of that. They're considered late game team fighting team because they always get there. They always get the fight off. Right, yeah, you thought I said Schalke.
Yeah, I thought you said Schalke, my bad.
It was yeah. In that sense. So it's like, Schalke, however, is a team that's like, they want to be that, but the problem is they don't have a stable way of getting there, right? So that's when you have that happen, right? You have those games happen where it's like, well, shit, you know, like, oh, something happened, but let's all show up there, right? And then the opportunity cost is way too large. You went for it, but it cost you way too much. They're at their best when the game is stable, right? When Abbedagge gets a bit of freedom to do what he wants, when Upset gets time to scale, but it's not at anybody's cost, and then Odoamne gets to just chill on his island, right? As top laners do. Except me, apparently. But yeah, in that sense, it's hard to pinpoint what they're also good at, right? Because I feel like a lot of situations where they feel pressured, they're going to lean towards going bot lane, right? Like, it's the same thing we had at World Finals. When we were pressured, we were going to, like, we bombed resources mid, right? That was our thing. We tried bombing resources into Rookie. Guess what? It didn't work. It didn't work.
The
The problem is when bombing resources mid didn't work, we also didn't know what we were supposed to do.
There's no
instead.
plan B. Yeah, of course.
Exactly, and this is a bit what Schalke has right now, is that they default to plan A. When they're playing plan A, which is just, let's just play slow, let's just play chill, let's go mid to late, it's fine. But when they panic and go to plan B, shit hits the fan, and you're hoping Upset does all the work, is how I perceive them as a team right now. Because I think that if they're playing a normal game of League of Legends, where you're just playing slow, going through the motions, playing the macro game, playing the early game, all this good stuff, Ignar will find you a good fight at some point. He's great at finding these flanks. Upset will provide the damage. Abadage and Trick are going to take control over the mid lane. They're going to do their thing.
So the comparison I would make is Team Liquid. I know the first thing people are going to say is Jensen is not Abadage and Abadage is not Jensen. But in spring, they didn't utilize Jensen very much, and they were so much about open the game up through bot lane. And one thing TL learned through MSI and through Summer is we can open the game up through bot lane, but first, let's win our mid jungle 2v2 first, and let's make sure we're strong here before we do anything on bot side. And once they unlocked that, Jensen became way more relevant, how TL played became way more dynamic, and it was just a better playstyle. And I wish Schalke arrived that kind of playstyle more so than just everything through bot lane, like fuck mid lane.
Well, I think that honestly with Dylan, again, this is something I'm sure they're discussing, right? It's just, like I said, Dylan's also realistic, and when he realizes that it might not work against a team that might be better than them, he's going to default to bombing resources bot again, right? So that's how I like that. That's like the biggest thing I learned from Dylan, right? He's always going to try to put his best foot forward and try to play the game the way it's supposed to be played. You play through mid, you play the draft the way it's supposed to be drafted, blah, blah, blah. But then if that doesn't work, you know what, guys, let's just try and go bot, see what happens.
Yeah, unfortunately on this team, like I don't even put much blame on the coach, like we said here. Like I think with what he got to work with, it's the most logical outcome of how you should play.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't want to put blame on.
Sure. But no, that was all cut out for some reason. Say that again.
Oh, I don't blame Dylan at all. Like I think he's doing it right, and I do think they're playing through mid when they're winning, right? When they're doing it right and they are playing through mid, they're a strong team. It's just when they don't, that's where they are lacking.
But the thing is, if you look at them as a team, like if I have Odoamne, at least season 9 Odoamne, who they've never in this team figured out how to use as like a carry threat, it just hasn't worked for whatever reason. I think part of it's on him, part's on the team, just doesn't seem like it's fit. Then you look at Abadage, they've even admitted themselves he had issues with communication. He wasn't that guy who was as vocal when he came in. He's clearly not been as good as some of the other rookies. But then again, I'll even add in, to be fair, look at how many mid laners get non-stop help from the support. You're just not really going to get that in the lane from Ignar like that. Like he's going to be in his lane. He's there to help Upset, mate. He's a support in that sense. Like he's not going to be the guy who's roaming 24/7 and you're going to set up all these sick 3-man ganks in mid.
Really? Like this, I think this is what people consider Ignar, a roaming guy.
Right, wait a second. It's cut out again. I couldn't hear that. Say it again.
Oh, I'm pretty sure Ignar is considered that guy, the guy that roams. I'm pretty sure. Like I haven't actually fully watched all their games, so you might be right. But
I'll take your.
Ignar is considered the guy that leads lane from as far as I'm aware.
To me, it's like very champion dependent, but I'm totally open to the idea.
Well, honestly, I'll give you that one. Really, like of course it's champion dependent, right? Like if you're playing Tom Kinch, I don't see you making a sick 3-man gank happen either. But yeah, I agree.
Sure. But to me, also the jungle attention isn't primarily for mid lane; it's for bot lane.
Right. Honestly, it's entirely possible to do things happen mid. But I do know that he's the guy that wants to make plays, right? He's the guy that roams, Ignar, generally. But yeah, they're a team that likes to play bot, right? I think Ignar and Trick are people that are very good at playing around bot lane and putting the early carry in a position that they can carry. So yeah, I agree with you in that sense, yes.
Right, and so anyway, the thing is, despite all the critique of Schalke we've just given there, they are playing Vitality. So I assume you favour them, right? Bwipo?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, like I said, I think that Vitality, the only way they've shown that they're successful in recent years, like in the recent 2 years, was playing through top, like bombing resources top with Cabochard taking over the game. I think that this was the main way of them playing. At their best, they were playing through Jizuke towards Cabochard. The through Jizuke phase kind of died, and they were still successful by playing through Cabochard, but then eventually it never caught on. And now I feel like they don't really have an identity. So it's hard for me to tell how good Vitality is, really. But I'm going to favor Schalke because of the history, right? I never felt like Vitality was the team that showed up in a best of 5 in the first place.
If this was Vitality from Spring, though, what a matchup this would be. Because if you have a team you think boring and that you have to get the ADC online, put fucking Vitality against them. They just go so ham in the early 5 minutes. It's going to be amazing. But unfortunately, like the Vitality that's arrived now is not really that Vitality. They're way more, as you said, they don't have the same identity even.
The Vitality from Spring, another thing that would have been really interesting is Zizuke in better form playing versus Abadage, who is, I think, one of the most exploitable players on Schalke. Like, them not having Zizuke in full form and like them really being able to pressure from mid lane, I think is going to be something that would have been a key factor in Vitality being able to take a matchup against Schalke.
Do you think that Vitality wins any games in the series?
Honestly, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they can catch a few wins. Again, it's Vitality, right? The fact that we don't have a finger on their identity either means that they're mad geniuses and there's going to be some shit flying about, fiddlesticks here or there, you know what I mean? Like, you can't really expect them. Like, I expect them to lose, but I don't expect them to roll over and die. I'll give you that.
Sure. What do you think, Loco?
I'm same boat as Bwipo. As you mentioned, I love the fiddle pick. Oh my god, that fiddle pick was so fun, and I'm sure they have more fun picks like that. And they know, like, if they just match Schalke for what it is, like, hey, let's just play normal, let's just play standard League of Legends, they don't have a shot, so they'll throw a curveball, and some of those will hit. But, like, as we talked about, like, Vitality, yeah, like, if you don't get shook by Vitality, then you just win. They are not a team that closes out particularly well. They're a team that needs a lead to get started. They are a team that wants to snowball on you. And if you don't get that, like, Schalke win-win.
Right, what about this? How about for the end of the episode? I thought an interesting discussion we could have at this point in time is who is the MVP of LEC? Because remember, MVP is only for the regular split. Should not at all matter what you do in the playoffs. You could bomb the whole playoffs in theory. If you were the best player in the spring and people give you the vote, then you win. So I noticed what's interesting is in Europe, the people being put forwards, at least by fans, as to who they think the MVPs are quite interesting because first of all, you start with G2, right? Someone from G2 has got to be a candidate because look how good the team is. But the very interesting thing is, this is how you know G2 is a super team because at different points in time, every single player over the years being considered the best in their role depends what point in time you go to. Right. So I've noticed that the push this split is for Jankos to be the one who's the MVP, which is actually the one I have to say overall. Like, I think that was the pick I go for when I discussed this on my other show. It's the one I went for overall. We can get into why, but the other candidates I've noticed people put forwards, like I said, if you're going to do Splice, Humanoid, as opposed to Scorby in the spring.
Hylissang.
I think if you're going to go with Fnatic, Hylissang's an obvious one you can pick there. I wouldn't mind else if someone said Reckless. I mean, contender for the best AD carry, obviously. So I think there's a few names out there, but it's not like some other region where there's like 10 fitting people. I think it's among this small group of people.
I think Mickey's a good one.
Who do you want there? You mean Mickey X, for fuck's sake? Yeah. Because the problem is when you say that, they're going to think XL Mickey.
Okay. I think Mickey X
got way too far. Look,
I think Mickey X is a good one.
Mickey X, yeah, there's another one you could put in. It's not unfair. Sure.
I think Mickey is so much more, or Mickey from G2 is so much more relevant where you shouldn't even specify until XL Mickey gets relevant enough. But I think Mickey X is a really good one also.
Right. Who would you pick, Bwipo, of all these names? Obviously, listen. Here's the thing, Bwipo. You can be biased if you want to. If you really think Hylissang, for example, is the best, pick him. So you tell me.
I'm going to throw my bias on here. I'll mention that for Summer Split, at the very least, I feel like the only player from G2 that you can consider MVP is Wunder, in my opinion. Okay.
I mean, first of all, he's taken half the troll picks. So.
Well, of course, but that's what I'm saying, right? He's not putting it into a position where he wants to be MVP, right? Unless you want to consider fun picks MVP worthy.
Yes.
But that's what I'm saying, right? You can look it up right now if you want. There's a site called Games of Legends. You can look it up. This guy's played a random champion for pretty much every single game. I think he has like 16 or 18 unique champions, and half of them are int picks, right? You're not going to tell me Shyvana top's a champion. You're not going to tell me. You're not going to tell me Soraka, Garen.
Exactly. Like, he's not the one who takes the stupid picks.
I don't mean by saying that he's not MVP. He can't be MVP valuable, right? Okay, so yeah, basically, I think the only player on two that doesn't have MVP value right now as of the split, right? I'm not talking about in the future. Of course, he's got the potential. He's considered the best top laner in the world at some point, right? So in this split, he hasn't made a case for it, right? I'm just going to be real with the facts. You play Kha'Zix top, you play Shyvana top, you play Soraka top, you play Garen top. You're not really being an MVP valuable teammate, I would say. So in that sense, any of the four other G2 players are candidates, right? at that point, it's personal bias towards what you feel like is the most valuable for a team, right? Whether it's Caps, Jankos. The Jankos brings the consistency. Caps obviously brings the explosiveness, brings all that good stuff. Perks bringing in Champion Ocean from the bottom lane, solid gameplay. Mickey X, obviously solid as well. There you go. That's not very fun to discuss, though, because, again, you can make an argument for any of those players, and that's fun. For me, talking about my own team is always fun, right? Because it helps me understand, right? How do people actually feel about Fnatic, right? Like, when they look at Fnatic, what do they feel like are the winning players? What are the MVPs? You have Broxa and Hylissang, right? These are considered the guys that set up the game, right? They are the guys that push Fnatic.
Freudian slip there. Bwipo thought that Jankos was his jungler. Freudian slip there.
Wait, what?
Right, listen, maybe one day he will be. I don't know.
No, I said, wait, didn't I say Broxa and Jankos? Anyway.
Yeah, anyway. Keep going.
Who's next, right? Who's next in line? Who is carrying Fnatic to wins, right? Because I feel like out of the laners, I have had a very big influence displayed on winning games, at least in my opinion, right? Okay. I've been a driving force in winning some of the games, if not
you've had some carry games for sure.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, right? So for me, from my perspective, I'm just thinking, right, do I match up in any chance to get MVP, right? Because that way I make the discussion about me, and that's fun sometimes too.
So do you think you do? Should you be the MVP?
I don't think I should win MVP, no. I don't think I had enough. Like, I had too many bad games, I think. I think this is the problem, right? I had some solid good games, and I'm sure that if the level of the LEC wasn't as high as it is, some of the games that I played are able to be considered MVP level, right? Like, I think that some of the games I had MVP performance. That's what the votes are usually for, right? But ultimately, I've had enough of those games, but too many bad ones to be considered.
I thought I'd throw this out since we're going with all the different names. Like, let's of your team then, is Hylissang the player you'd put forwards as MVP?
It's Hilly or Broxa, and it's hard for me to say which and which.
Make
right?
the case for each of them. What would the case for each of them be?
The thing is for Hilly is that he's obviously been huge in a lot of games, but he's also been Hylissang in the other games, right? That's the thing. Like, we have a joke where, like, I made a joke about Hilly in the sense it's like you have players that like forget how to play a champion one day, and then the next day they're like really good at it or really shit at it, right? Like, well, Hylissang is like, well, he forgets how to play the champion during the game,
right?
It's like as the game goes on, all of a sudden you're just like, what is he doing? No offense at all. I'm really good friends with Hilly, and the thing is I don't feel that way because I think he's a really smart player. It's just that some of the decisions he makes and the things he sees are next level. You have to be fully committed with him. And I think that is what he needs at all times from his team to be considered an MVP, like full-on MVP, straight up. Best, most valuable player. And I don't think we as a team are able to facilitate that for him. A player very similar is Mickey X. I think Mickey X and Hylissang are so similar in that sense. Like, sometimes you see Mickey X doing things where you're like, what the? You're like, wait a minute. Right, I remember he had a game near the end of the split where this happened. I think he was playing Poppy support, or was just like he was just running it at some point, right? That in mind, I would give it to Broxa because I think he's been super solid through the whole split. Basically, I think we've had only 1 or 2 bad games from him, from what I can tell.
I think he had insane first 4 weeks, and then he struggled a little, and then he just spiked up again. Yeah,
exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I think that like he was a driving force for a very long time in our team, and he set the pace for the split, if that makes sense. And I think that's something that needs to be considered in the most valuable player discussion, right?
Yeah.
Is your player setting the pace for the games? Is your player setting the pace for the team, right?
So one thing that people talked about is Fnatic's system. So we don't have to talk about if you guys actually have a system or not, but you guys are very specialized in what you guys do. You draw a lot of pressure. Reckless is resource independent. He talked about playing stuff like Garen, playing stuff like Karma, so he doesn't need to draw resources and he can give it to other people. Hylissang, as we talked about, incredible roamer, incredible playmaker. Nemesis, solid mid all around. So is Brox's role predetermined before game? Because that's where people take away a lot of points for Broxa. Like, there's a structure way that Fnatic plays, and Broxa's just playing in that structure. He's playing within that system.
I don't think so. Again, our system. I don't feel. I'll comment on it because I feel like I should. I don't think we have a system in the sense that all of our players are studying back home, sitting here in our notebooks, being like, all right, this is what I need to do it in 2 minutes, and then at 3 minutes, and then at 4 minutes, and then at 5 minutes, blah, blah, blah. Or even this is a point of discussion in our draft at all, right? It's just we've got champions that we think are good. Our players are good at them. We're going to prioritize them. If it turns out that other people don't agree with that priority, I don't think that's because we have a system. I just think that's a difference in mentality, right? Are they similar? Yeah, well, I am playing champions similar to Aatrox. Beefy deal a lot of damage because that's how I'm going to pull out those champions more often. That said, I think Brock's obviously just discussion about his early game, right? There's always a discussion, right? I'm contributing my feedback to him for the early game. The coaching staff is contributing the feedback. Of course, in the jungle pathing, the jungler is reliant on his team. If his team's not communicating what they need from the jungler, he's got to be some fucking nuts level of jungler to see it as he's playing. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist. It does. And that level of play is something that every jungler should aspire to be, right?
Sure.
Is to be able to take all the information whilst he's playing and still make the optimal decision as it's happening. But that's a ridiculous level of play. I'm going to be honest, I don't think I've ever seen from any jungler in the world, ever, right? Because this takes a level of awareness and understanding of the game far beyond what is normal.
Yeah.
So yes, we're all contributing to his early game pathing, right? But ultimately, he's there to make it happen. And that's a skill that you have to address as well, right? You can make a plan, but you need players that can execute it. And I feel like he's the most stable in executing early game plans. I don't think you should call it an early game system. Every game is different, right? Every plan in the early game will be different. Sometimes you're going to have a Renekton and an Elise. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to go top, right? Is that a system? Well, it's just more like this is what you want to do with your draft. And in that sense, every time we do draft, yes, we are very clear in what we want to do, where we want to be with our jungler. Fact of the matter is, Broxa is there. He does execute.
Who's the MVP for you, Loco?
The obvious one is Jankos, and I'm probably going to have to lean that way. Veteran talked about Hylithon. I know Bwipo mentioned Hylithon also, but just G2 had a spectacular split, and I feel like Jankos just played such a core role, and he fulfilled every role as a jungler. And one thing also weird about G2 is they play so much troll picks, so maybe it's out of principle that I'm not okay with giving someone MVP on G2, but they did have the best performing players, so for me, but
it's not like Jankos wasn't the one doing the troll picks though, so that shouldn't really affect his status. I agree on the Wonder one. I think that immediately disqualifies him. Like, there was way too many troll picks.
I think
right.
Or go ahead.
All right. I think that's the thing about G2. That's why he should be considered MVP. Jankos. Because I think even through all the troll picks, he was the most consistent member. There you go. Most consistent in this case, I think, means most valuable because, again, we can all agree pretty much every single one of these players can be considered the best in the world, if not are considered the best in the world, which means that out of that group of people, you need to draw the most consistent one for that specific split, unless they had like a ridiculous performance, right? Not like best in the world, but like straight up like above what people consider is the best, right? In that case, you're looking at consistency. Sorry.
My number 2 is Mickey X. I think he also had a really standout split, and he was amazing on certain champions. And usually, when you get amazing on like flashy champions, like you're amazing on Rakan, you're amazing on Pyke, you kind of let go of the other aspects, but he still plays Tahm Kench really well. I think he's just so well-rounded as a player, and that's something about G2 that goes... that doesn't get spoken about a lot, but their players are well-rounded. It's not just they're good at these flashy champions and they suck on the more boring champions. When Jankos plays Sejuani, when Mickey X plays Tahm Kench, they still do their job extremely well. They have
when you were out of the room before, this is something me and Bwipo very briefly addressed, which is basically that usually the best player and best team have the best fundamentals as well. Like you see the flash because that's what you can do when you've got all the rest of your game in place. Yeah, then you can go above and beyond. But to even get to that level, like there's plenty of players, everyone can think of them in their mind now, who have a high peak. Like they have games that are crazy, but then they have 4 games that are shit afterwards. And if they play a normal champion, they're just an average player. So yeah, I agree. Like the point of G2 is you get lost in all the crazy picks and the amazing map rotations and skirmishes and fights that they win. But if they didn't have those insane fundamentals at the base level of nearly every player, they wouldn't be able to do all that shit and get away with it. Like, that's a luxury.
Yeah. Good League of Legends is often really boring. Good League of Legends is having vision somewhere so people can't walk in, like pushing someone out of lane so they have to recall. Like, it's not flashy. It doesn't show up on your scoreboard. It doesn't say a kill. It says you push someone out and you have more priority, so you walk like you can walk somewhere first or you reset first and you have more items. Like good fundamentals is hard to tell unless you really look at the game or you're someone that knows a lot of League of Legends.
I think to comment on that, I think the best fundamental a top laner can have, and this is something I always told myself, the best thing top laners.
Oh, cut out again, right? Who just said it? It's like anytime he's going to reveal the secrets of the universe, like Youngbuck presses the like mute that's built into your house, like mute the mic, right? What were you going to say? The best fundamental is what?
As a top laner is to have priority when you're not supposed to have it.
There we go.
I think that this is why my Ornn and Sion and whatnot, like this is what I was considered good at, right? And this is why I was good in the first place, is I had priority in lanes I wasn't supposed to. Maybe sometimes I traded a bit too aggressively and I dropped to death, but ultimately I did have the priority, right? And the question,
it's like when I'm watching sometimes in the LPL, I've seen games where the Shy played Vlad and like isn't even losing lane.
Yeah, beating Jace level 1, like beating Jace from level 1.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like it's just using your, like that's what makes you exceptional laner. I think is just abusing your runes and ways to play the game, play the trades, right? Because again, you're a top laner, right? You trade. Like I'm just gonna throw it out there. There's not a top laner in the world, in my opinion, right, that has been successful by not trading, right? And you're going to tell me, let me, right? I'm ready for that. You know why? Let me does trade. He trades evenly. He responds so well. And that's what made Let Me such a good player.
Quite underrated,
right? Exactly, right? But that's the thing. People are like, oh, he goes even. But that's the thing. He wouldn't go even if he was just eating shit to every trade, would he?
Of course.
No, it's because he was able to respond effectively every single time you went on him, right? So that's, for me, from a top laner's perspective, what's really important.
You know, this actually, I think this, we can draw a bit more out of this actually, because in, you know, the discussion we had at the beginning of the show, we were talking about being an aggressive top laner and like basically the narrative around you and other players that have been like that. But like I mentioned, if people haven't seen the growth this year, there were times where you played very unselfishly actually, and you literally gave people like Reckless your resources essentially and came and backed them up in their lane. Well, you made a point earlier that was quite interesting where you basically said something along the lines of like, any player that's good in some sense will play aggressively or something like that. One of the things that I do think is a flaw of some players is when you get those players where, like the analogy I always give for top laners is like this, like, okay, so in Europe, our main sport, soccer, football, right? In football, very few players, very few ever chose to be a defender. What happens is you all play football, everyone wants to be a striker or like a winger or something. Of course, you do all the playmaking, you get all the glory, like everything's about you. But what happens is when you're a boy and you start playing, when you're not good enough to be an attacker, but maybe the coach sees like, it seems like he's a smart player though, you know, decent fundamentals. He just tells you to become the defender. You can be in the school team, but you've got to be the left back or something, you know. That's what you do to a left winger who didn't have the right pace or he wasn't good enough at scoring, you know, you just make him the left back, right? You tell him here's the concept. In the same way, right, because as you said, for 9 seasons, for most of those 9 seasons, top laners have been like the most hard done by carry role. Like they have had to play the tank or like their carry game was like, you have a bruiser. If you can mad him but use this matchup, maybe you can sort of carry. It's like you never truly had the full access, right? So now that we're in a world where there've been times where you could unleash the carries, you've actually seen that some of the players who were being hailed as like the best top laners, they only had that one gear. They only had the gear of like, I start the game, I'm probably not going to get any attention. I'm on an island. I might even be behind. I might even take a losing matchup to give the pick elsewhere to my team. And you have these players who are specialists. They're amazing at playing bad matchups, playing behind. Their job is just go even. But the problem some of those people have, I think there's actually a problem. I look at people like Odo Amne and say, I think they haven't been able to step up in this regard. Is in a world where maybe they could have actually been the carry at times. They themselves don't even seem to think of themselves as that player. They think their job only is like, I have this one specialized job and that's all I'm ever going to do. And if you do that, you'll never be a fully well-rounded, complete player, I don't think.
I agree. I think you need to be able to step up and take the resources, right? This is another football analogy, right? Ideally, when you're playing football, at least the way I was taught it is you want to be able to go for the goal. You want to be able to go for 2 passes at least, right? You want to have 3 options. Guess what? There's 3 options in League of Legends, right? There's 3 lanes. Ideally, you want to have a team that has 3 options.
You can get so lazy in a certain meta where you let go of the certain skills. Like in a meta where it's just like Maokai Sion, Maokai Sion, Maokai Sion, of course top laners are gonna not be able to play carries. And you need to do that extra push. And as Bwipo talked about, even in like tank matchups, there's small edges you can get and there is priority you can get. But most top laners and most players just, I'm on a tank. What do you want me to do? Like, this shit is fucking boring. Like, what I do doesn't matter. where there are little things where you can maximize, you can min-max things to get advantages and to get a little bit more priority.
Sure.
Oh,
I won't give like some super old historical example from 6 years ago that no one watched on the show. We'll leave that one for another show. Is there a last topic?
Last topic I do want to talk about. Did everyone get to read the Perks interview that he did with like the Croatian website? There's a Croatian website where he did...
yeah, I always read Croatian website. What? Okay, you're going to have to give me some more info here. Was it in Croatian?
It was translated in English and posted on Reddit.
Right, okay.
So...
Okay. No, I didn't then. Right, shall I read it now? Is there a relevant part you want to quote?
Well, it's a long interview and there was interesting parts, so we don't have to go through every single part. But
give us some highlights to talk about then.
One part that he talked about that I thought was really interesting was in the roster building process for G2 this year. He said the first option was actually not getting caps. He said the first option was him playing mid and going with a different AD carry. But the AD carry was contractually obligated to another team, so he didn't go. And a lot of people were speculating that it was upset. I actually thought it's probably upset, but it might be Zeben. But that would have been also a really interesting world where Fnatic got to keep caps and G2 built their own roster without destroying Fnatic's, and how it would have matched up and how different it would have.
Yeah, I know he doesn't exactly like you said that, but and also to be fair, like that, like I know you like the counterfactual you set up there is an interesting one, but to be fair, it's not like Caps would definitely have stayed. Like for example, if what Caps said is true and he wanted the challenge and goes, he might be on Cloud9 right now. You know, there's other options that were available. So yeah, but okay, yeah, true. There might be a world where he'd stayed. So. Basically, what do we think of the world where there'd be Perks mid lane and a different ADC?
Yeah, like Upset or Zeben. Most likely it was Upset due to their friendship. But
like, first of all, one thing that has to be said is, even though I think Perks, like I actually think the only downside of this G2 lineup is I'll never get to see what would have happened if Perks had stayed as a mid laner. I think that's a really interesting discussion. And I think that's actually the one area that sucks in LEC at the moment is nobody really puts Humanoid as like the competitor to Caps. They say Humanoid's a really good mid and maybe he's even an MVP, but you know what? Caps is Caps. He's too good, isn't he? The problem is Perks was the player who should have been the rival. They should be the Bjergs and Jensen of our league, and we should have that constant rivalry where it would be fucking amazing. I'd love to see what happened, because here's the thing. To me, what I love about the two players as well is they're both very high level, but I think Perks is a way more stable player. Like, I think that's quite an interesting, even stylistic contrast. You know, they're not the same player at all. So there's that factor. So on one level, who knows? Maybe there's a world in which the mid lane's more stable for G2. But I tell you what, with Perks as a mid lane and a normal AD carry, not Perks playing ADC, they would not have this style whatsoever.
They'd be more one-dimensional.
I think they could even maybe still be number one, but they would not be the team that they are now. I don't think they would win an MSI, for example. So that's my take on it. Even though those players could be better for all I know, you know. It's just like that style. That's like we have a phrase, like an idiom that says like catching lightning in a bottle. Like nobody could have predicted that style would exist. When they were putting the team together, they didn't know it existed. No one could.
Once in a blue moon.
Some of it was luck, because obviously you can tell they must have just started playing like that and being like, fuck, this all just worked. We can just do whatever we want.
One thing that also doesn't get talked about with G2 is like they just get along so well together, and they're also like a brotherhood team where they are such good friends outside of the game, and it shows like inside of the game, it shows in when they do their content. Like that's also like lightning in a bottle, as we said.
What do you think this team would be like in an imaginary hypothetical world where apparently Fnatic wasn't destroyed, Bwipo? You know, when Fnatic still existed as a top team. No, what do you think of this potential G2 team, though?
Honestly, I think whatever team has Caps on it can turn into that type of team. I'll give you an example. Summer Split 2018. What do you think Fnatic was when I was playing bot lane?
Yeah, key word when you were playing bot lane.
Yes, this is the team we were. I was doing crazy, running around getting 10 kills a minute, like getting a kill a minute in an LCS, right? That was what our identity was at some point, right? I was running around playing Swain, Galio, Victor. I had a random champion every game bot lane, didn't I? So in that sense, when it comes to troll picks, I've got my experience as well. But that's what I'm trying to get. That's what I want people to understand, right? Is that's what Caps brings to a team. Is he brings uniqueness. He brings leadership in the sense of you want to follow the guy into his stupid shit, right? Like when he's doing something stupid, you want to follow the guy in. You want to go with him. You want to see how it goes, right? You want to be there for the ride when you're playing with Caps. At least that's how I feel. And that's like the type of leadership that I always felt, regardless of me playing top or bot lane. And that was something that was very enjoyable about playing with him. And it was something that, you know, it was a great experience, really.
By the way, just as an aside, because you're obviously within the scene more, do you actually have a theory as to who the player would have been, who the AD carry he's referring to?
I'm going to be honest. I have almost no contact with anybody and any other player outside of my team.
You haven't been invited to the Skype group, right? I see. So
I
you're truly in the Illuminati yet, right? Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really communicate with anybody out of my team. Like I don't discuss with anybody. I don't really have LEC friends in the sense of, like let's go hang out or drink something or whatever. Like I'm honestly doing my own thing. I have for the past 2 years. So in that sense, I honestly haven't got a clue, mate. Like I can make as an educated guess as anybody else would, right? Sven is obviously like, don't get me wrong, right? After that year in TSM, I'm sure he would have been looking for options, and they're good enough friends to talk with each other, right? Whereas on the other end, Schalke, they just came off summer finals. Are they really that unhappy? Again, right? It makes more sense if you think about it that way that it would be Sven, right?
Sure.
In the same vein,
it would the history they have,
right? Exactly. So, but yeah, it could have been upset all the same. Like, I don't know how people feel in their team or anything like that, right? For all I know, that team could have been crumbling. TSM could have been the best, like have the best atmosphere ever, and Schalke could have been crumbling, or the other way around. I have no clue because I don't talk to anybody about this really.
Yeah. I think
what I love is in LEC now, like I bet in Fnatic, they've become like the paranoid girlfriend. You know, the girlfriend where when she's been cheated on once, like now you can't even talk to a girl in the club. She said, "What are you talking to that bitch for?" What you said? Like, I bet if they even see someone talk to Perks, they're like, "What the fuck are you saying?" Or anything like that. But they have like a professional lip reader offset. Are you saying something about the off season? What about the off season? Shut it down now. Shut it down. Like, I wouldn't blame them. I'd be doing that, mate. I'd have like the equivalent of a chastity belt on their fucking mouths. I don't know what the equivalent to that would be. Gag, I guess. Don't know.
I think it's 90% Upset and 10% Sven, just because Upset, I heard Upset and Perks are really good friends from what I heard, and Sven also does make sense. I wouldn't take it out of context. Like people are like, "Oh, look at Sven now. Like, why would G2 want Sven?" Like Sven is still very fucking good, and he still had like a year ago, Sven was still so highly regarded.
Let's be real. If you are in G2 and you are Perks, you have a completely different sense of Sven than anyone else watching the game. Like, you don't give a fuck that on TSM he didn't do well. Like, what do you? In fact, you don't even play in that region. You would ignore that entirely. You'd go, "I know who Sven is. I played with him.
Absolutely.
Could he do this on my team?" And you would recruit. In the same reason I told you, Loco, 100% that teams would be going ham to get Mithy when he came back to Europe. I don't give a fuck if he entered a bunch of games in LCS. Everyone in Europe's not going to go, right, "Oh, he had a couple of bad LCS splits. Yeah, fuck him. I'll just take this random rookie." No. Like, players like that are always going to get another chance. They've earned it, to be fair.
Actually, I do remember when Perks was asked about TSM last year, about Mithy and Sven failing, he said, "I don't know how TSM failed with Perks and Mithy, or Sven and Mithy. These guys are crazy players. Like, they taught me so much. Like, I just don't know what's wrong within TSM, but it can't be Sven and Mithy." Like, that was Perks' point of view last year, and this was about last year's offseason. So, yes, he probably would have really...
I mean, I will say, listen, he's not here now, but I'll imagine I'm addressing him and replying to him there. Like, you don't understand how TSM failed with Sven and Mithy. Did you ever see yourself at a lot of those international tournaments? Like, you were playing with them, you failed. Just going to say that. Just saying, homie, how did you fail? That's my question. So, just saying. I should have a show called Just Saying, where what I do is I say really obnoxious shit that's not just saying. It's actually making accusations. So then I just back off like, just saying, bro. Because somehow that makes it acceptable at the end. Like, is there anything else in this interview that was pertinent?
That was the biggest talking point. There was a lot of interesting points. If you guys haven't seen it, I would go read the Reddit post.
The translated one, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, the interesting thing about G2 is that Mickey X was joining regardless, right? Like, I imagine. So the question is okay, having Perks mid lane and then having that solid AD carry that could potentially have been Upset, could have been potentially been Sven, whoever, right? Just a solid AD carry. Do you think this would be a contending team? I think so, right?
Mate, I would enjoy seeing Upset and Mickey X play in a bot lane.
Exactly, right? Upset Mickey. Let's say Upset Mickey X on Caps, Fnatic back on Caps. That's
a rivalry.
That's a good few games, right? That's going to be enjoyable.
All right, I think we can start closing out. Bwipo, thank you so much for being on. You were one of the best guests. So talkative, so informative, and polite.
As I do. I talk too much, to be fair.
Duncan, any final words?
Not really. Yeah.
All right.
It's all good.
Cool. Thank you guys so much for being on. I'll see you guys later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.
Thank you so much to our goal supporters, ButtPounder420, Tobias Bernasconi, and Icelandic C9 fan. And thank you to our silver, bronze, and iron supporter. Thank you to all the Twitch subs. Thank you to all the YouTube viewers. Thank you to all the podcast viewers. Thank you to basically everyone that, makes this happen. Everyone that, thank you to everyone that basically makes this happen. Without you guys, this wouldn't be possible. And yeah, I appreciate it so much.